Chapter 1. I beseech your majesty to refer to me as the Crown Prince. A tall and strikingly handsome man, slightly limping, strolled gracefully along the jade path in front of the Tai Chi Palace. Despite the awkwardness of his gait, he exuded an indescribable aura of nobility. The Tai Chi Palace, the epicenter of power in the Tang Empire, stood majestically, emanating unparalleled grandeur and solemnity. The intricately carved dragon and cloud motifs adorning the eaves and brackets seemed to narrate the palace's supreme status and the flourishing era it represented. Suddenly, the man halted, his expression betraying a multitude of thoughts. He slowly lifted his gaze, fixating on the towering palace before him. Bathed in the morning light, the palace resembled a colossal golden mountain ascending towards the heavens. The imposing pillars of the entrance loomed high, with lifelike dragons coiling around them, their gem-studded eyes silently scrutinizing the world. 3 years had passed since he traversed into the Tang Dynasty, yet standing before this palace still left him in awe. For this structure was not merely a building, it symbolized the prosperity of the Tang era, embodied imperial authority, and represented the pinnacle of power that countless individuals yearned for. In the square before the palace, the flagstone's surface gleamed like a mirror, immaculate and devoid of dust. On either side, the imperial guards stood in solemn formation, their armor glinting with a cold radiance under the sun, their long spears standing erect like a forest, silently declaring the palace's majesty. After lingering for a considerable time, the man sighed deeply, his tone tinged with regret. In such a splendid atmosphere, I fear I shall not witness it again. As he spoke, memories of the past few years flickered through his mind like a slideshow. 3 years ago, he had crossed over to become Li Shimin, the crown prince of the Tang Dynasty. In a bid to avert the tragic fate that had befallen him in history, he had altered his previously extravagant lifestyle, conducting himself with utmost caution and even strictness, avoiding any missteps. Yet, unexpectedly, Emperor Li Shimin's affections for Princely Tai had only intensified. Just 5 days prior, he had decreed that Li Tai reside in the Wuda Hall, a location of even greater significance than the Tai Chi Palace, a symbol of imperial power, leading the world to believe that the crown prince was destined for deposition. Moreover, the fate of Li Chengqian's predecessors loomed ominously. Li Jiansheng had been slaughtered by his brother Li Shimin, and Yang Yong had met a similar end at the hands of Yang Guang. This history bred trepidation among the officials of the crown prince's court, who, in secrecy, conspired to assassinate Li Tai and then rallied a faction to revolt. By the time he discovered their machinations, it was already too late. Rebellion? Against a man hailed as unmatched in military prowess? Even with an army of 10,000, he deemed it futile to contend with a figure who commanded 300, especially after Dou Jianda's failure at Hulao Pass served as a cautionary tale. According to history, what awaited him next was exile, followed by death in that very land of banishment. Contemplating this, Li Chengqian spat in disdain, his face set in resolute determination. If fate has decreed that Li Chengqian shall perish, then let it be a grand finale, so that my crossing over shall not be in vain. Historically, Li Shimin had been exceedingly concerned with his reputation due to the implications of the Xuanwu Gate incident, even becoming obsessed in his later years, frequently querying his ministers on how posterity would perceive him. Since I am unable to resist fate, I shall engrave his name, notorious for his cruelty, indelibly in the annals of history. Fratricide, fratricide, the extermination of nephews, the burning of the sister-in-law, the imprisonment of the father today. I shall add one more sin to his ledger, the forced demise of the legitimate heir, thus enabling him to achieve the ignoble feat of familial estrangement. At that moment, a multitude of armored soldiers surged forth, encircling Li Chengqian. The leader, a towering figure of exceptional stature, adorned in imposing iron armor, wielded a spear that glimmered ominously with a chilling light. Li Chengqian narrowed his eyes, taken aback by the realization that Li Shimin had sent someone to seize him. It was indeed a grand display. The man before him was none other than Cheng Jijia, renowned for his prowess, earning the moniker of Single Whip, Master of Li Qiankuan. Your Highness the Crown Prince, His Majesty requests your presence in the palace. Cheng Jijia spoke with a steady voice. Noticing the utter lack of respect he showed towards the heir apparent, Li Chengqian felt a cold smirk rise within him. In the past, when I sought to survive, it was bearable that you all looked down upon me now. As death looms near, if I still allow your disdain to persist, would my demise not be in vain? He gazed directly at Cheng Jijia, declaring, I am the crown prince of the Tang Dynasty, Li Shimin. How dare you not bow before me? A flicker of surprise crossed Cheng Jijia's face. He had not anticipated the typically meek prince to suddenly adopt such a defiant demeanor. He hesitated for a moment, on the verge of anger, but recollected that the prince still held his title, and with reluctance he slightly bowed, saying, I come in accordance with His Majesty's decree. Should His Majesty be present, there would be no need for reverence. Huh, is the Emperor's word a decree, yet mine is not? If you refuse to bow, then slay me, and carry my corpse into the Taiji Hall. With that, Li Shimin unsheathed his sword with a sharp ring, pointing its tip at Cheng Jijia's nose. Seeing Li Shimin's audacity to threaten with death, Cheng Jijia's expression shifted multiple times, yet ultimately, he slowly inclined his body. I, Cheng Jijia, serve His Majesty's decree. I implore the crown prince to enter the palace. Li Shimin scoffed inwardly indeed, as he suspected. Although Cheng Jijia was a martial commander, he possessed a keen intellect. Recognizing that he remained the crown prince, Cheng Jijia would certainly not dare to act against him under the guise of disrespecting the royal family. With that, he dismissed him entirely, sweeping his robe and striding purposefully towards the palace. As he departed, Cheng Jijia straightened slowly, his expression clouded with confusion. Why does the crown prince seem so different from before? To enter the Taiji Hall, one must traverse a corridor adorned with exquisite dragon carvings upon red-painted pillars, each detail narrating the splendor and might of the Tang Dynasty. Upon exiting the corridor, the imposing Taiji Hall, the epicenter of power in the Tang, came into view. The guard stationed at the entrance, upon seeing Li Shimin's arrival, neither approached to pay their respects nor even glanced in his direction. Li Shimin felt a surge of indignation at the soldier's blatant disregard for him. Where there are servants, there must be a master if not for Li Shimin's incessant suppression. These common soldiers would not dare to treat him with such contempt. This Li Shimin either ought to abolish his title or simply eliminate him, yet to place him in the position of crown prince while persistently undermining him, was this not akin to roasting him over an open flame? With such thoughts swirling within him, his fury intensified, and he felt as though flames were about to erupt from his eyes. He raised his sword, pointing it at the guards, and commanded, Open the gates for me. The guards exchanged glances, yet none dared to move. Good. If you do not open the door, I shall do so myself. As he approached the palace doors, he hesitated briefly, not out of fear for his own life, but rather from a sense of compassion for his family. Having traversed 3 years in this new world, he had fully integrated the memories of Li Shimin. Thoughts of his obedient son and gentle, virtuous wife flickered through his mind, evoking a moment of reluctance. Yet, this reluctance was quickly suppressed. After all, in a world where the nest is overturned, no egg remains intact. He had witnessed firsthand how Li Shimin annihilated the entire Li Jiancheng family. Resolutely steeling his heart, he pushed open the palace doors, and a gust of chill air greeted him. Before him sat a middle-aged man of imposing countenance at the highest seat. Li Shimin, the emperor of the Tang Dynasty, renowned as the strongest carbon-based life form of the 7th century, the governor of Asia, the authoritative figure of the Eastern Hemisphere, and the heavenly Khan. Flanking him on the right was Li Jing, the military god of the Tang, known for his impressive feats in battle, followed by the likes of Wei Chao and others. On the left was the foremost strategist behind the Xuanwu Gate incident, the first meritocrat of the Tang Dynasty, Changsun Wuji, accompanied by Fang Xianling, Wei Zheng, and Chu Suiliang. Together, this assembly of individuals was unparalleled throughout history, a coalition that few could challenge. Li Shimin sighed, confronted by such formidable figures. What could he do but maintain his composure? At least, he could face his end with dignity, and thus, he strode into the hall with his head held high. The ministers and military officials had just witnessed Cheng Jijia leading troops to apprehend the crown prince, but now that the prince had arrived, Cheng Jijia was nowhere to be found, leaving them puzzled. Yet, Li Shimin remained the crown prince, and none dared to question his presence. At this moment, Li Shimin sat with a frosty demeanor. Cheng Qian, kneel before me. As an emperor who had seized the world through might, His words carried an air of supreme authority that evoked involuntary fear. Li Shimin's countenance was one Li Chengxian had seen countless times before, each encounter filling him with trepidation. However, he found that he had no need to fear any longer. He met the gaze of Li Shimin on the dragon throne unflinchingly, his voice steady and neither submissive nor defiant. "This is the court. I respectfully request your majesty to address me as the crown prince." Li Shimin was taken aback by Li Chengxian's boldness, momentarily stunned before his expression turned even colder. "Are you conspiring to rebel? You would disregard familial bonds and send assassins after the Wang of Wei, and yet you presume to call yourself the crown prince. Under normal circumstances, when an emperor approaches his heir, ministers would rally to defend him. However, at this moment, all the officials merely observed with a sense of intrigue. Even the maternal relatives, including Changsun Wuji, typically expected to support Li Chengxian unconditionally, were distant. This was due to Li Shimin's long-standing attitude, which had suggested a desire to dethrone Li Chengxian.
Chapter 2. Did Li Shimin die of anger? Li Chengxian had long grown accustomed to his isolation within the court, and at this moment he displayed no hint of surprise. Merely casting a cold gaze around the assembly of officials. It was then that Wei Ting, the close ally of Li Tai and the Minister of Justice, stepped forward and respectfully addressed Li Shimin. "Your Majesty, the Crown Prince is ungrateful. His position as Crown Prince should be revoked immediately. And he should be exiled to the frontier." Other supporters of Li Tai soon echoed his sentiments. "Your Majesty, Li Chengxian is disloyal and unfilial, lacking both benevolence and righteousness. He must be stripped of his title." One individual even pointed directly at Li Chengxian. "If His Highness were to kneel and plead for Your Majesty's forgiveness, then repent his sins at the ancestral temple, Your Majesty might show mercy and lighten his punishment." Listening to their words, Li Chengxian could not help but scoff inwardly. How absurd. He had come here today to confront Li Shimin with his very life. Mercy was out of the question. Just as everyone anticipated that he would. Like in the past, kneel and beg for mercy, perhaps invoking the memory of the late Empress Chongsun. Li Chengxian burst into raucous laughter. Ha ha ha. Amidst the astonished gazes of those present, he fixed his gaze upon Li Shimin. "You claim I am unworthy of the title of Crown Prince. Does that mean you were deserving when you were Crown Prince? Or do you believe that one who wields his brother's severed head to coerce his own father is the rightful heir?" He then turned towards Li Tai's faction. "I am the eldest grandson of the illustrious Emperor Gaozu, the legitimate son of Empress Wendy. And I have been the rightful crown prince of the Tang Dynasty for 17 years. Are you truly worthy to speak of my deposition?" Upon uttering these words, a clamor erupted within the Taiji Hall. What madness had possessed Li Chengxian to speak to Li Shimin in such a manner? Was he not courting death? In truth, they were not mistaken. Li Chengxian had indeed come here to embrace his fate. Li Shimin's face darkened, his anger palpable. Since ascending the throne, he had toiled day and night, aspiring to transform the Zhongguan era into the greatest flourishing age in history, ensuring that future scholars would extol his virtues. Yet, witnessing his own son publicly accuse him of treachery at the Shonu Gate filled him with both shame and fury. Pointing a trembling finger at Li Chengxian, he stammered, You ungrateful wretch, you." Completely disregarding the visibly enraged Li Shimin, Li Chengxian turned to the civil officials and called out, "Where are the historians?" These officials, astute and keen, were not about to follow Li Chengxian's lead into madness. They all lowered their heads in silence, none daring to step forward. Crown Prince Li Chengxian commands the historians of the Tang Dynasty to step forth. Currently, the historian was Feng Xianling, who had always favored Li Tai and was known for his astuteness. Under normal circumstances, he would not heed Li Chengxian's call. However, in accordance with the rituals of the court, he had no choice but to comply. He first glanced at Li Shimin, who was now so consumed by rage that he seemed somewhat unhinged. "I shall see what this ungrateful son intends to do." Feng Xianling reluctantly stepped forward with a flourish of his sleeves, his expression one of obvious reluctance. He was of a dark complexion, not particularly tall, with rugged features that suggested a warrior rather than a strategist. Li Qingqian, however, was indifferent to the opinions of others. He was determined to make his move. With the historian present, my words shall be recorded and endure through the ages. With that proclamation, he retrieved a spirit tablet from his sleeve, holding it close to his chest. Among the ministers, those with keen eyes noticed the inscription on the spirit tablet, Sacred Tablet of Empress Wendy. One by one, expressions of disdain surfaced on their faces. They had wondered what Li Qingqian might do, only to see him resort to the same old tactic of invoking his deceased mother, Empress Zhongshan, to plead for mercy. Emperor Taizong, too far away to read the tablet, was no fool. He could easily guess whose name was inscribed. His fury intensified. Every time trouble arose, Li Qingqian dragged his beloved wife into the matter, disturbing her eternal rest. And how could a man who hid behind his mother in times of crisis ever be worthy of the great Tang's throne? Li Qingqian, meanwhile, observed the crowd with icy detachment. Underestimate me? Fine. I'll make you weep in regret. In the 16th year of the Zhongguan era, Crown Prince Li Qingqian, holding the spirit tablet of his mother, Empress Wendy, and clad in the ceremonial robes bestowed upon him as the imperial heir by Emperor Gaozu, slit his own throat in the Taiji Hall. Thus, history would record, Emperor Taizong of Tang imprisoned his father, murdered his brothers, slaughtered his nephews, violated his sisters-in-law, and drove his own eldest son to dash his skull against the Taiji Hall's pillars, marking him as the most ruthless sovereign in history, devoid of kinship or mercy. The moment Li Qingqian's words fell, the entire court was stunned. The ministers who had dismissed his actions as predictable still wore expressions of scorn, frozen in disbelief. The Taiji Hall plunged into an eerie silence. Moreover, Li Qingqian's act had effectively condemned every official present. From this day forth, whenever Emperor Taizong recalled this scene, their very presence would fester in his heart like a thorn. Some ministers wished desperately for needles to deafen themselves on the spot. Emperor Taizong's face flashed crimson with rage. Li Qingqian, exhilarated by the sight, nearly laughed aloud. Look at him, red with fury. His goal achieved. There was nothing left but to depart. Without hesitation, he resolved to end his life fast, gathering his strength to hurl himself toward a nearby pillar. The ministers, still dazed, were too slow to react. But Emperor Taizong, seated upon the throne, had not lost his senses. His eyes bloodshot, his demeanor frenzied, he roared, "Stop him! Stop him now!" His voice cracked with desperation. Even in the direst battles of Hulao Pass, he had never felt such panic. Abandoning all imperial dignity, he leapt from the jade steps. If Li Qingqian died here today, history would forever brand him as a ruler devoid of loyalty, filial piety, humanity, or righteousness, a sovereign who severed all familial bonds. By the time the ministers snapped out of their stupor, it was too late. Li Qingqian, resolute in his death wish, moved too swiftly. Just as he was about to collide with the pillar, a tremendous force yanked him backward by the collar. A towering, fair-skinned warrior, standing 8 feet tall, had seized him. Li Qingqian's heart sank. If I fail to die now, my fate will be worse than death. Emperor Taizong would surely subject him to unspeakable torment. He thrashed violently, desperate to break free and complete his fatal strike. But the Taiji Hall was small, and the ministers, now fully alert, had encircled him like an iron fortress. It is finished, there is no escaping this fate, and I shall surely suffer for it. At this moment, Li Shimin had arrived nearby, but due to the chaos, no one made way for him. Stand aside for me, Li Shimin bellowed, prompting the ministers to finally react and quickly part to create a path. With hurried strides, he reached Li Qingqian's side. Li Qingqian appeared disheveled, his demeanor akin to one possessed, with uncontrollable spasms at the corners of his mouth. You ungrateful wretch! Li Shimin struggled to articulate his words, seizing a minister's tablet and bringing it down upon Li Qingqian's head with ferocity. Having spent half his life in warfare, he was particularly adept with bow and horse, his strength formidable. The tablet shattered upon impact with Li Qingqian's skull, leaving him momentarily dazed, searing pain radiating through his head, causing a brief lapse in clarity. As he regained his senses, He saw Li Shimin preparing to strike him again. A flicker of panic crossed Li Chengqian's eyes, given the current trajectory. It was clear that Li Shimin could very well beat him to death. While he feared not death itself, he was not indifferent to pain. However, having already crossed the line, he knew begging for mercy would be futile. Resolutely, he raised his chin and shouted, "Your Majesty, will you strike me again? Pray tell. Is this a matter of familial law or national law?" In his fury, Li Shimin was deaf to reason and quickly grasped another tablet, poised to strike once more. Li Chengqian, sensing the imminent danger, raised his voice defiantly, "Your Majesty, in the presence of the ministers. Please clarify whether this is a matter of familial law or national law." The mention of the ministers seemed to pierce Li Shimin's anger. For he was most fearful of public scrutiny regarding his personal actions, causing him to halt. Seizing the opportunity, Li Chengqian continued, "If this is indeed familial law, does that mean the emperor is avenging my mother? But let me remind you, I was nurtured by her milk, she would never strike me with a tablet." Li Shimin trembled with rage. "How dare you bring up your mother? You are not her son. She would never bear such a wretched child as you." With nothing left to lose, Li Chengqian pressed on with malicious intent, How am I not the son of both you and my mother? My rebellion merely mirrors yours. Yet I cannot compare. I lack your ruthlessness in fratricide, the murder of brothers, than the imprisonment of fathers." The mention of fratricide and patricide struck a nerve within Li Shimin, a point of deep sensitivity, and his fury intensified. Meanwhile, the ministers, realizing the potential calamity of the emperor striking the crown prince in the Tai Chi hall, began to encircle Li Shimin, fearful that the repercussions would fall upon them. "Do not impede me. I shall not rest until this ungrateful wretch is dead. Begone. Do not obstruct me." At this juncture, some courtiers, led by the likes of Chongsan Wuji, fearing that Li Chengqian might further provoke Li Shimin and bring disaster upon themselves, pulled him away while urging, "Your Highness, a light punishment is preferable to a heavy one. This is the way of a son. You must not place His Majesty in an unjust position. Quickly, let us depart." Although these individuals were civil officials, having emerged from a tumultuous era, they possessed a modicum of martial skills. Li Chengqian, with one leg not quite functioning properly, was unable to resist and was dragged away. Just as he was about to be pulled out of the Taiji hall, he, adhering to the principle that it was better to infuriate than to care for his own life, shouted loudly, "Emperor, I am not your uncle. I do not need a knife at my throat to embrace death. I shall soon perish in the ancestral temple. Just you wait. When I reach the underworld, I will inform my mother and the esteemed Emperor Gaozu, and tell those valiant warriors who sacrificed their lives for the Tang Dynasty." This is how Li Shimin became emperor. Li Shimin, amidst his furious tirade urging those around him to disperse, was clearly on the verge of a mental breakdown. Upon hearing these words, his eyes widened, as if he were ready to commit murder. Unfilial son. I will kill you. Kill." Before he could finish his sentence, a torrent of blood gushed from his mouth, and he rolled his eyes back, succumbing to a fit of rage that caused him to faint. His face turned pale as he collapsed amidst the crowd. Had it not been for the throng of people surrounding him, he might have suffered a far worse fall. Chapter 3: A dire situation. Upon witnessing the alarming scene, the ministers were immediately engulfed in chaos. "Quickly summon the imperial physician. His Majesty has fainted. We need assistance at once. Hurry and fetch Zhang Quan." Li Chengqian observed the commotion with a sense of amusement, chuckling to himself. Could it be that Li Shimin might actually be driven to death by his own fury? How gratifying this day is. In the midst of his mirth, he astutely noted the varied expressions of the relatives surrounding him, particularly that of Chongsan Wuji, whose face briefly betrayed a complex emotion. Although he could not best Li Shimin, he was perceptive enough to comprehend their thoughts. Should Li Shimin perish from rage, the current crown prince would undoubtedly have the greatest opportunity to ascend to the throne. However, he remained skeptical that this formidable being of the 7th century could be so easily undone, acknowledging that he too faced a perilous fate. Enough of this. The thrill has subsided. If death is to come, then so be it. I shall take my leave swiftly when the crowd disperses. After all, Li Shimin was known for harboring grudges, and upon awakening he could very well devise a means to torment him. Lost in thought, he had already exited the Taiji Hall. And the ministers accompanying him found themselves in a quandary. Should they confine Li Chengqian? They possessed no authority to do so. Yet to allow him to live could lead to dire consequences if he were to meet his demise at the ancestral shrine. At this juncture, all eyes turned to Chongsan Wuji within the hall. As the current Minister of State, he held a prominent position among the three dukes. And as a royal relative, Li Chengqian's uncle, he was the only one with the authority to make a decision. Li Chengqian observed the minister's demeanor with clarity, realizing their folly in placing hope in Chongsan Wuji. This man was far too shrewd to take a stand at such a critical moment. Indeed, as anticipated, Chongsan Wuji averted his gaze, ignoring the outside, and instead engaged in a cacophony of voices with the court officials, calling for the imperial physician. The distribution of officials inside and outside the hall was quite telling. Outside, under the leadership of Chao Suiliang and Gao Jifu, those favored by Chongsan Wuji, there were no military generals present. Inside, apart from Chongsan Wuji and a few civil officials from the Qin Wangfu, all were military commanders. This situation arose due to Li Shimin's firm grip on military power. It was understandable given that he had instigated the Shonu Gate incident to prevent future upheavals. At that moment, a soldier rushed in from the palace gates, calling out urgently, "Battle report! Battle report!" An urgent message from 800 Li. Simultaneously, the personnel from the Imperial Medical Department arrived. And the crowd within the Taiji Hall quickly parted to allow them to carry Li Shimin into the inner hall. Led by Chongsan Wuji, the high-ranking officials exited the hall to receive the soldier's report. They exchanged glances, knowing that despite the urgency of the military situation, an urgent report of this nature was only to be viewed by the emperor. With Li Shimin unconscious, they would have to wait for him to awaken. After approximately half an hour, Zheng Quan, the head of the Imperial Medical Department, emerged from the inner hall, prompting the ministers to flock around him. What news? How is His Majesty? When will he awaken? Has His Majesty regained consciousness? Faced with the barrage of questions, Zheng Quan raised his hand, signaling for silence. Your Majesty is not in grave danger, it is merely a case of anger overwhelming the heart. I have just administered acupuncture, and shortly I shall prescribe medicine. In no less than 10 days, or at most half a month, your Majesty shall awaken. At this moment, Chongsan Wuji furrows his brow and inquires, must it truly take so long? Can we not hasten the awakening of His Majesty? No. Zheng Quan replies resolutely. Upon hearing this, the ministers are immediately engulfed in a cacophony of discussion. Feng Xianling gestures towards the battle report in Chongsan Wuji's hands and states, if His Majesty cannot awaken temporarily, how shall we deal with this report? Indeed, the military situation is urgent, and the specifics remain unknown. Outside the hall, Li Chengqian, surrounded by a throng of people, smirks inwardly. These individuals are astute, not easily fooled. Can they truly not discern the content of the report? The reality is that none wish to bear the responsibility of initiating an urgent response. At this moment, Wei Zheng steps forward, hesitating yet clearly poised to speak. Observing this, Li Chengqian understands that Wei Zheng is about to voice his thoughts, as he is known for his decisiveness and candidness. After a brief moment of contemplation, he states, esteemed officials, the military situation is dire, akin to a fire at our heels. Why not together examine the battle report? Should His Majesty inquire in the future, we shall unite in bearing this responsibility. What say you? These officials, who aided Li Shimin in establishing the prosperous reign of Zhongguan, though occasionally harboring their own intrigues, are certainly not mere sycophants. They recognize the gravity of the situation. They all nod in agreement, acknowledging the necessity of pragmatic action in urgent times. Indeed, should His Majesty inquire in the future, I am willing to share the burden with you all. With no dissent among the crowd, the previously silent Chongsan Wuji asserts, "You all labor for the state, disregarding personal gain and loss, or I too shall act accordingly." With that, he reveals the seal on the documents, first reviewing them himself before passing them to several senior ministers for their perusal. After reading, their expressions vary, some furrow their brows, others grin, while some maintain an impassive demeanor. At this point, Li Shimin grows somewhat impatient. These individuals are indeed troublesome, delaying his own endeavors. What pretense is this? I can already surmise the content of the report. Did they not have prior plans? It is now the early days of the 16th year of the Shonguan era, and historically, the Tang Dynasty faced only one significant battle during these years, the battle at Ruozhenshui against the Shuoyan Tuo. The Shuoyan Tuo, a faction of the Tiela tribe, was originally a vassal of the Eastern Turks. To restrain the Eastern Turks, Li Shimin had supported the Shuoyan Tuo and conferred the title of Konoponinan. The conflict arose when, at the beginning of the 15th year of the Shonguan era, the Shuoyan Tuo sought a marriage alliance with the Tang, only to be rebuffed by Li Shimin, which led to resentment and ultimately the declaration of war. However, the pretext of rejection was merely an excuse. The Shuoyan Tuo had grown increasingly powerful and sought to challenge the Tang Dynasty. As a ruler renowned for his foresight, Li Shimin would undoubtedly have made necessary preparations. It is likely that the Ministry of State Affairs had already devised plans for military mobilization. The ministers exchanged glances, and ultimately, Chongsan Wuji declared, "The leader of the Shuoyan Tuo, Inan, has dispatched his son, Dadu, accompanied by hundreds of thousands of troops to invade our territory. If we do not make a decisive decision soon, we risk falling into a passive position." Feng Xianling furrowed his brow and remarked, "Currently, in the northeast, we have Goguryeo poised to gallop southward at any moment, while in the southwest, the Tibetans eye us with predatory intent. If the northern borders remain unstable, it is likely to trigger a chain reaction." Chongsan Wuji nodded in agreement, suggesting, "Shall we deliberate on this matter?" Upon hearing this, the assembled ministers exchanged glances, each silent. As they shared a common sentiment, this matter had long been decided, there was no need for further discussion. After a prolonged silence, none dared to take the initiative. Among the martial officials present, some grew restless. One burly man, with dark skin and a full beard, exclaimed, "You lot are truly troublesome. Hasn't this matter already been settled? We could simply issue an imperial decree and be done with it." Following his statement, the officials continued to observe the ground, maintaining their silence. This large man, seeing their reaction, grew impatient. "Aren't you all just afraid of acting without His Majesty's consent, worried that you will be blamed for mobilizing troops?" Before he could finish, he was abruptly pulled back by Qingjie, who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Jingda, why are you pulling me? I haven't finished speaking," he protested, preparing to continue. However, Qingjie firmly tugged him back, insisting, "Jingda, cease your words. Matters of state are best left to the judgment of the esteemed officials. You, who can barely read, should refrain from interjecting." Although Weiqi Jingda's words went uncompleted, he had nonetheless pierced through the FAOD of silence. Chapter 4. Do you think you can bully me? Feng Xianling interjected, "Now that His Majesty is in a state of unconsciousness, how shall we issue the order to mobilize the troops? No one dares to take the lead in issuing such a command without the Emperor's consent. To do so would imply that the Emperor is incapacitated and that one possesses the authority and capability to command the ministers to mobilize forces, which is tantamount to declaring oneself capable of rebellion. Moreover, with the position of the crown prince in such uncertainty, should someone with power choose to support a particular prince, it could very well ignite a second coup at the Shonu Gate." Li Shimin, eager for action, glanced irritably at the silent ministers and pushed them aside. "Is it truly such a waste of time just to issue an order to mobilize troops? I shall take charge." As soon as his words were spoken, the minister's eyes lit up. Legally speaking, although Li Shimin had committed a grave error and had just enraged Li Shimin, the emperor had yet to issue a clear decree stripping him of his status as crown prince. Furthermore, The crown prince retained the right to govern and could lawfully issue orders for troop mobilization. Any future suspicions from Li Shimin would likely be directed at Li Chengqian, leaving the ministers uninvolved. The ministers exchanged glances, tacitly agreeing to allow Li Chengqian to issue the order. Even the supporters of Li Tai recognized that, given the current circumstances, Li Chengqian's position as crown prince was now firmly established. All the civil and military officials bowed in deference, urging, "Your Highness, please make a decision." Confronted with this display of submission, Li Chengqian felt a surge of determination. Even the lowliest of creatures cling to life. If he were not driven to desperation, he wouldn't contemplate such drastic measures. Perhaps he could seize this opportunity to secure a glimmer of hope. Fearing that Li Chengqian might act recklessly, Feng Xianling hastily declared, "Your Highness, the Chancellery has already prepared a strategy for troop mobilization. The military situation is urgent, and we beseech you to approve it immediately." Li Chengqian, upon hearing this, could not suppress a cold laugh inwardly. Did they think him a fool? Once he approved this, he would lose his value. Noticing his silence, Feng Xianling's eyes flashed with a sharpness as he stepped closer, insisting, "Your Highness must approve it at once, otherwise, should we delay the military operation, you would be held accountable for any ensuing consequences." "Is it truly so?" Li Chengqian thought, his expression turning icy. "Feng Xianling, let me ask you. What do you mean by held accountable for consequences? Do you possess an imperial edict condemning me?" Feng Xianling was taken aback by the audacity of Li Chengqian, who had always been perceived as weak and easily intimidated. However, with his astute nature, Feng quickly regained his composure. "Your Highness's previous actions were witnessed by all present. Your blatant disregard for the emperor cannot be termed anything but a crime. To be truthful, in matters of statecraft, Li Chengqian certainly could not match Feng Xianling's prowess. Yet when it came to identifying and exploiting flaws in arguments, Feng seemed like nothing more than a novice before him. Thus, with righteous indignation, Li Chengqian bellowed, "You dare! Feng Xianling! If you lack the emperor's explicit decree, then your accusations are nothing short of slander against the crown prince." He then turned to Chongsan Wuji, asking, "My lord, what say you? What crime has Feng committed?" Li Chengqian's inquiry was indeed significant. Although Chongsan Wuji was not an official in charge of criminal law, he was the principal figure overseeing the revision of the Tang legal code, the Tangle Shui, and possessed the highest interpretative authority over the law. Furthermore, while Chongsan Wuji did not support him, he equally did not favor Li Tai, leading to a covert rivalry with Feng Xianling. This statement momentarily stunned Chongsan Wuji, leaving him at a loss for words, as the accusation Li Chengqian leveled against Feng Xianling constituted an unjust decree, which, according to the law, warranted execution. Yet, given the current circumstances, could Feng Xianling truly be executed? The answer was evidently no. At this moment, Chongsan Wuji hesitated, bewildered, and inwardly astonished. How had his nephew suddenly become so formidable? He was an entirely different person from before. Observing Chongsan Wuji's silence, Li Chengqian secretly chuckled. Even his cunning uncle found himself in this predicament. However, he had little time to continue this idle banter, as time was of the essence for him. He turned to the assembly and declared, "I possess the authority to govern in the absence of the emperor, is that not so?" With this incident concerning Feng Xianling, who would dare to contradict him? All present bowed and replied, "We heed the crown prince's command." Seeing the acknowledgement of his authority, Li Chengqian seized the moment to voice his intentions. Shuiyantuo, a savage tribe that once revered the might of our great Tang, now dares to invade our territory. I have resolved to personally lead the troops into battle, swiftly punishing the disloyal and upholding our imperial grandeur. Upon uttering these words, a profound silence enveloped the court. Each official exchanged apprehensive glances, regretting their earlier acceptance of the crown prince's governing authority. Logically, they had navigated the political arena for many years and should not have committed such a blunder. However, the crown prince's sudden transformation had caught them off guard. Nonetheless, Under the current circumstances, they could not concede to Li Chengchen leading a grand army into the field, as it would be akin to sending meat buns to dogs. The most alarming prospect was that should he return victorious, it could lead to a coup against the court, and regardless of its success, they would undoubtedly face the wrath of Li Shimin upon his awakening. Meanwhile, the military officials, who had remained silent, began to whisper among themselves as they observed the scholar's predicament. Li Chengchen noticed the stirring among the military, yet felt no surprise. After all, these individuals had fought alongside Li Shimin for many years, sharing bonds of camaraderie beyond mere loyalty to the sovereign. Among the Tang generals, the most influential was naturally Li Jing, yet he was known for his cautious nature, typically adhering to the maxim, if summoned to battle, I shall fight; if permitted to return home, I shall rest; I concern myself with nothing else. Next in rank was Qing Jijie, who was equally astute and likely to remain reticent. Indeed, both remained silent. At that moment, the previously vocal Yuqi Jinda stepped forward again. Qing Jijie attempted to pull him back, but to no avail. Your Highness, he began, I am but a straightforward man, so please do not take offense. Given the current situation, it would be wise for you to remain in the capital. Otherwise, should His Majesty awaken and find you missing, it would surely spell trouble. Although this statement may seem straightforward, it carries a hint of subtlety. However, Li Chengchen was unconcerned and responded promptly, I fight for the nation. What trouble could my father possibly have in finding me? Wei Qi Jingda, a man of remarkable honesty, did not mince words. You need not speak in circles with me. Let us not forget that just moments ago, you were scolded by His Majesty in the court. If he awakens and seeks you out, who else would he look for? You may not be aware, but the emperor has long held grudges since his youth. Chapter 5. The exorbitant demands. Li Chengchen's gaze momentarily shifted as he swiftly discerned the flaw in Wei Qi Jingda's assertions. The general's words were inconsistent. In the court, where could one find the notion of rebuke? It is said that a nation with loyal ministers will not perish, and a family with loyal children will not face ruin. My previous remarks were sincere counsel, and my father has always heeded such advice. How could he possibly harbor resentment against me? This retort rendered Wei Qi Jingda speechless, leaving him stammering without a coherent response. Finally, he thumped his head and declared, Your Highness, I am but a simple man. If you wish to lead the army out of the city, it must be over my dead body. In truth, his statement mirrored the sentiments of nearly all present. Li Chengchen understood that mere sophistry would not persuade these individuals to acquiesce to his command of a grand expedition. Political maneuvering, at times, resembled a commercial negotiation. I propose an exorbitant price, and you bargain down to a mutually agreeable sum. In truth, I do not feel compelled to personally lead the army into battle. Upon hearing this, the atmosphere among the attendees lightened somewhat. However, after a prolonged silence, no one ventured to respond, and a look of helplessness crossed Li Chengchen's face. Then allow me to speak plainly. I concur with the strategies proposed by the Chancellery. But I must insist on being appointed as the vice commander of the expedition, and I wish for Ho Junji to serve as the commander. The moment these words escaped his lips, all present regarded him as if he were a fool. Who among them was unaware of the close ties between Ho Junji and himself? The distinction between Ho Junji as commander and Li Chengchen personally commanding was negligible. At this juncture, Li Chengchen suddenly adopted a less aggressive demeanor, smiling gently as he scanned the assembly with a calm tone. Esteemed ministers, if there are any reservations, I implore you to voice them. Although I have occupied the position of heir apparent for many years, I have achieved little and feel a profound sense of shame. This campaign against Shui Ento presents me with an opportunity to contribute to our state, and I also hope for a measure of my father's favor. What are your thoughts? He paused, his gaze imbued with a hint of anticipation as he continued, Though I am the heir, I am still young and inexperienced. How can I single-handedly shoulder the weight of national affairs? The matters of state are burdensome, and no single individual can bear them alone. If you do not collaborate with me, I fear we may jeopardize crucial state matters, and when my father places the blame upon you, it will be your suffering. While I shall have no choice but to take my own life in the ancestral temple, His preceding remarks were largely superfluous, the cracks lay in the latter statements. Conveying a clear message: should you refuse my demands, I shall certainly withhold the decree for military action, and, should you fail to act, my demise will be on your conscience. The gathered scholars, all of them remarkable individuals, swiftly weighed the pros and cons in their minds. They were certain such a decree would not be forthcoming, yet if Li Shimin remained incapacitated for half a month, the northern borders could falter, leaving them vulnerable to incursions from Goguryeo and Tibet. Should Li Shimin hold them accountable, they would bear responsibility. Moreover, they had no means to restrain Li Chengqian nor to prevent his self-immolation. If Li Shimin were to awaken and discover that Li Chengqian had taken his life at the ancestral temple, his infamous reputation would be solidified. And the mere thought sent shivers down their spines. After an extended silence, Wei Zheng stepped forward. Your Highness, how about this proposal? In a state of urgency. It was clear to all that we could not consent to your leading the army alone. His words were sincere enough, and Li Chengqian nodded in agreement. What insights does Lord Wei possess? Please, do share. Wei Zheng surveyed the room. Hesitating momentarily before responding, let us propose this: as long as your Highness authorizes the order for military deployment, we shall permit you to accompany the army. However, General Li Shaji must be appointed as the commander, with General Cheng Jijie as the deputy. You shall not hold any position within the military, and all powers, including yours, must be entrusted to General Li. As soon as he finished speaking, the assembled ministers fell silent, tacitly accepting Wei Zheng's suggestion. This plan, indeed, was foolproof. It would not only confine Li Chengqian within the army but also prevent him from taking his own life at the ancestral temple. More importantly, Li Chengqian was still the crown prince, possessing the authority to oversee governance. Remaining in Chong'an could potentially lead to unforeseen chaos. At this moment, Li Chengqian felt an overwhelming joy. What he desired was merely to leave Chong'an smoothly, for other matters were of little concern to him. His initial exorbitant demands had borne fruit. Had he expressed his wish to accompany the army from the outset, they would have surely opposed him. However, by insisting on a leadership role, he had secured their consent to join the expedition. To avoid raising suspicions among the ministers, he refrained from immediate agreement and pondered for a moment before stating, I find this method indeed feasible. Yet I wish to appoint Ho Junji as the deputy commander in place of General Cheng. Wei Zheng, anticipating this response, quickly shook his head in rejection. Your Highness, this is our final stipulation. If you cannot acquiesce, we will have no further recourse. Realizing the conversation had reached a critical juncture, Li Chengqian understood there was no need to persist. Nevertheless, he feigned reluctance and did not respond immediately. At that moment, Chongsan Wuji stepped forward. His voice calm and devoid of emotion. Your Highness, it would be best not to trouble the esteemed ministers further, please agree. Although Chongsan Wuji held power comparable to that of the other prominent officials, his unique status as Li Chengqian's uncle meant that his endorsement would solidify the arrangement. Should Li Chengqian acquiesce? Seeing this, Li Chengqian decided to abandon his facade. Very well, I shall agree. But I have one final request: the army must be mobilized within 2 days. His insistence stemmed from a desire to avoid prolonged uncertainty. The ministers understood Li Chengqian's reasoning. But it mattered little, as the intelligence network of the Tang Dynasty was not to be trifled with. They had already anticipated Shui Yantuo's incursions and had prepared for military action. With the matter settled and Li Shimin in no immediate danger, the ministers returned to their duties. After all, the vast Tang Empire could not afford to halt its operations for even a day, and specific plans for the military deployment needed to be arranged. The ministers bowed slightly to Li Chengqian. We take our leave. With that, they filed out, while Li Chengqian remained stationary, gazing up at the majestic Taichi Palace. Momentarily lost in thought, had he truly navigated this ordeal so smoothly? At that moment, he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder from behind. The crowd around him seemed to shrink away, and he wondered who would dare approach him at such a time. Turning around in curiosity, he found himself face to face with a man in his 50s. Tall and broad-shouldered, his features were sharply defined, with brows like blades and eyes as deep as a cold pool. The man exuded an air of gravitas akin to a great mountain, and a faint, intriguing smile played upon his lips. Li Shimin. What was he doing here? This man hailed from a prestigious lineage and had played a significant role during the chaotic end of the Sui dynasty, overseeing the Tang's military campaigns in Bashu and pacifying the southern regions. If the northern territories of the Tang were secured by Li Shimin, then the south was undoubtedly Li Shigong's conquest. In a way, he could be regarded as the second most crucial figure in the establishment of the Tang dynasty. However, due to the magnitude of his accomplishments and the potential for envy, he had long chosen to remain in the shadows, refraining from participating in court affairs. The departing ministers cast sidelong glances at the two men, their expressions a mixture of complexity and intrigue. Despite Li Shigong's withdrawal from political life, his influence remained substantial. He publicly maintained no alliances, yet his extensive experience in Jiangnan had garnered him countless old friends in both military and political spheres. Moreover, his relationship with the esteemed General Li Jing, who now held the highest rank in the Tang military, was shrouded in ambiguity. Although they appeared to be distant acquaintances, their past collaboration during Li Shigong's campaigns in the south suggested a deeper connection, one that a child would find hard to disbelieve. Your Highness, is there something you need? Li Shigong chuckled lightly. The crown prince just now bore a striking resemblance to your father in his youth. Upon hearing this, Li Chengqian's mind raced. What did he mean by that? Was there a hidden implication? As he pondered, Li Shigong had already turned to leave. Wait. Why is he leaving? Li Chengqian mused, bewildered by the man's cryptic demeanor. Yet, seeing him depart, he decided not to dwell further on it and made his way back to the Eastern Palace. For he too had preparations to undertake for the expedition against Shuiyantuo. Though he had managed to secure the privilege of accompanying the army out of Chang'an through sheer determination, he still faced a perilous situation. In this campaign, he wielded no authority within the ranks, and both Chen Yaojin and Li Shaji were staunch supporters of Li Shimin. He was certain that once he joined the army, they would keep a close watch on him, ready to escort him back to Chang'an at the first opportunity. Fortunately, with Li Shimin suddenly incapacitated and no orders issued to punish those involved in the conspiracy against the crown prince's court, there was a glimmer of hope. If all those conspirators could accompany him on the campaign, while they might not overshadow Li Shaji and Wei Qijingda, they could still rally a loyal faction within the army. He firmly believed in the adage, the emperor does not dismantle the hungry soldiers, and before the troops move, provisions must be in place, as well as money can drive even the devil. Thus, he was determined to arrange for his trusted allies to join the expedition while simultaneously gathering funds. Once he was within the ranks, he would generously distribute money, and with the cooperation of his confidants, he was confident that success was within reach. Chapter 6, A Journey into the Desert. In a moment of contemplation, he found himself standing before the Eastern Palace gate. The prince's Eastern Palace had long been a desolate place, largely due to Li Shimin's disfavor towards him. With the assassination of Wei Wanglitai and his alleged intentions of rebellion, the atmosphere was even more desolate, evoking a sense of chaos akin to that of fallen trees scattering monkeys. Li Chengqian understood that this was not the time for excessive reflection. He slapped his face to rouse his senses and pushed the door open. At that moment, the crown princess, Su Ningyu, sat in the grand hall. Her eyes as clear as autumn waters yet devoid of life. Although she was aware of the impending outcome, she still adorned herself meticulously, her beauty akin to a painting. Her brows resembling distant mountains, lightly brushed with makeup, and her pale purple palace attire lending her an air of utmost dignity. She brushed her hair away from her face, gazed skyward, and murmured to herself, "It must be time. When I meet the prince in the underworld, will he blame me for dressing too casually and losing his face? Perhaps he might." With a flash of determination in her eyes, she affirmed her identity as Li Chengqian's woman, the crown princess of the Tang Dynasty. Even in death, she would not be belittled. "Bring me the golden threaded scarlet wedding gown and phoenix crown I wore on my wedding day." Just as Li Qingqian entered, he overheard her words. Puzzled by his wife's intentions. However, clarity soon dawned upon him. She was preparing to don her attire to accompany him to death. A surge of emotion welled within him, solidifying his resolve to seize this opportunity to carve out a path to survival. Navigating around the screen, he stepped into the main hall. No need to prepare. I have returned, he declared. Su Fei looked up in surprise. Your Highness, you have returned. Yet, the joy on her face quickly faded, replaced by a mix of anger and helplessness. Ah, the Emperor has sent my husband back for a farewell. What a splendid father he is. Please wait. I will fetch the young master and Jugu. Urgency took precedence over all else, there was no time to waste. No need to call them. Quickly gather all the valuables in the residence, he urged. A look of confusion crossed Su Fei's face, soon replaced by indignation. What do you mean, Your Highness? Do you think I would live on alone? From the moment I married you, we became one, in honor and disgrace, we share it all. If you die, what is the point of my existence? Fear not, I shall not tarnish the name of the Crown Prince's residence. Once you depart, I shall accompany you. Upon hearing her words, Li Qingqian felt a warmth in his eyes. What a remarkable woman she was, but truly commendable Crown Princess. He quickly clarified, no. The Emperor has left me in a state of confusion. Seizing the opportunity, I have sought to join the army heading to confront Shuiyantuo. I now require funds to win the hearts of the troops along the way. Instantly, joy illuminated Su Ningyu's face, her voice brimming with disbelief. Is what you say true? Indeed, hurry and gather as much money as you can, he urged. Su Ningyu hailed from the renowned Su clan, a family of distinguished lineage. Her grandfather had served as a prime minister during the Sui dynasty. Despite the upheaval of dynasties, the family still wielded considerable influence in the political arena. Growing up in such a family, I have long been steeped in the art of political strategy, keenly aware of its significance. Without uttering a single superfluous word, I immediately rose and made my way to the rear hall. Meanwhile, Li Qingqian began to contemplate his next course of action. He understood that winning people's hearts could be achieved through wealth, yet he was an amateur in the art of warfare. He required a commanding general, and without a doubt, Ho Junji was the optimal choice, loyal to him. However, summoning a military leader to the Eastern Palace at such a time would undoubtedly attract attention. As he pondered this, a knock echoed from outside. Your Highness, Ho Junji has arrived. His thoughts raced. Was this man akin to Cao Cao, arriving unannounced? While it might provoke suspicion, time was of the essence, his arrival was fortuitous. With a clash of iron helmets, Ho Junji stepped into the grand hall. He was not particularly tall. Yet his prominent brow and sharply defined features exuded a fierce aura, his eyes occasionally flashing with a menacing glint, radiating a palpable intensity in his demeanor. Li Qingqian furrowed his brow slightly. Had this man lost his sanity, daring to enter the palace clad in armor? Yet he quickly relaxed. Ho Junji possessed a unique methodology in leading troops and training soldiers, though his political acumen was virtually non-existent. Otherwise, he would not have aligned himself with the clearly declining crown prince. Junji has arrived, please, take a seat, Li Qingqian gestured subtly. Ho Junji, however, did not express gratitude but merely inclined his head slightly, stating, as I am clad in armor, I shall refrain from sitting. Junji, have you come to discuss something with me? Li Qingqian inquired, feigning ignorance. Although Ho Junji lacked political finesse, he was not a fool. He instantly discerned Li Qingqian's mistrust, his expression darkening. Have I not earned your highness's trust after working together for so many years? Li Qingqian remained unfazed by the directness of his question. Recognizing that individuals whose emotions were so plainly written on their faces were the easiest to manage. Junji, what are you getting at? You are aware of the recent events in the court, are you not? What do you believe I should do now? With a furrowed brow, Ho Junji proclaimed. In my opinion, Your Highness should issue an edict immediately, allowing me to lead the troops into battle. Once the army is halfway to the destination, I will deal with those two. He mimed a throat-slitting gesture. Then we shall march on Chang'an, and our great undertaking will surely succeed. Li Chengqian found himself momentarily speechless. Ho Junji's greatest flaw was his excessive arrogance and disregard for others. Who had instilled in him such confidence that he believed he could eliminate Li Shaji and Yu Qigong and launch an assault on Chang'an. The most formidable figure of the 7th century, Li Shimin, was not dead, merely incapacitated. Nevertheless, Ho Junji was the only usable military leader at his side, and it would not be prudent to openly contradict him. While the army would march forth, provisions would still rely on the court. Should they encounter obstacles in besieging Chang'an, they would inevitably face a shortage of supplies, leading to dire consequences. Ho Junji, well versed in military strategy, quickly recognized that he had acted impulsively in his earlier favor. I have been reckless, or what would Your Highness suggest instead? Li Chengqian had already devised a comprehensive plan. He intended to seize the moment when the Tang army triumphed over Shui Yantuo to recruit as many of the fleeing soldiers as possible, subsequently retreating to the vast desert. Shui Yantuo, having endured such a battle, would undoubtedly suffer significant depletion of his vitality. Upon reaching the vast desert, he intends to usurp power. As long as he can establish a firm foothold in the arid expanse, he believes he can engage in prolonged resistance against the Tang Dynasty. However, this so-called resistance is merely a strategy of delay, for he does not envision himself capable of defeating the elite soldiers and valiant generals of the early Tang. Yet, if he can sustain this standoff for a few years, allowing Li Shimin to wear himself thin, he could then rally under the banner of the Tang's legitimate heir and march southward, where possibilities abound. Junji, I have actually devised a plan. But it requires your unwavering support. Upon hearing of this genuine intention, Ho Junji displayed a hint of astonishment, as this prince had previously been a person of few words, often unable to articulate more than 3 sentences in a single breath. Chapter 7: The Good Brother. Your Highness, you need only give the command, and I, Junji, shall spare no effort. I will gather a troop amidst the army, and when the time is ripe, we shall act accordingly. However, this troop requires your leadership. Ho Junji furrowed his brow slightly before responding, as for the command of the troops, that is naturally within my purview, but... Li Chengqian understood well the reason behind his hesitation and rose to pat him on the shoulder. As for how to accompany the army, it is evident that there is no hope for an overt approach. You must follow in secrecy. Remember to find a way to bring all your trusted subordinates along, for they will prove invaluable when the time comes. Rest assured, when great achievements are realized, I shall advocate for your noble title. While he was indeed involved in the rebellion alongside Li Chengqian, due to his military merits, he would not face the death penalty. At most, he would be exiled or imprisoned. However, Li Chengqian's request to secretly mobilize his troops without the court's knowledge could incur the death penalty for 9 generations. Yet, Ho Junji appeared oblivious, his face radiant with elation. As his mind raced with thoughts of his current status as a duke, was he not on the verge of being conferred a princely title? With an excited tone, he exclaimed, "Thank you, Your Highness. Shall I prepare at once?" "Yes, go ahead." Observing Ho Junji's retreating figure, Li Chengqian revealed a satisfied smile. This man, though capable, possessed an arrogant disposition, which generally did not make for a commendable subordinate. Nevertheless, he cherished 2 qualities in him: audacity and a ruthless nature, attributes essential for the endeavors he planned to undertake. At that moment, Su Ningyu instructed her servants to move boxes into the main hall. After nearly half an hour of bustling activity, the hall was filled to the brim with boxes. Li Chengqian, puzzled, wondered why there were so many. He stood and casually opened one, revealing neatly stacked silver ingots inside. He turned around and opened several more, discovering that aside from a few precious stones, such as jade, agate, and pearls, most boxes were filled with a plethora of copper coins. Am I truly this wealthy? He was taken aback. It was not surprising that he was unaware of this. For although Li Shimin had exerted immense pressure on him and elevated Wei Wang Litai with the intent to undermine his position, he had never been denied financial resources. Particularly in recent years when he had been living frugally, accumulating wealth without much expenditure. Just then, Su Ningyu emerged from the back hall, having completed her tasks. Your Highness. All the silver and treasures from the estate are here. Do you find this sufficient? If not, I have some jewelry as well, which I can offer you. Li Chengqian, with his keen insight, swiftly caught the implication in her words. You wouldn't have brought out your dowry as well, would you? Su Ningyu showed no signs of evasion and spoke candidly. Why not? Compared to what your Highness intends to accomplish, my dowry is nothing of consequence. He had always perceived Su Ningyu as a gentle and virtuous woman, but his perspective shifted dramatically through these events. Should he ever ascend to the throne, she would undoubtedly become a remarkable empress. Rest assured, I shall repay you 100-fold in the future. Yes, I trust your Highness. With so many boxes of jewels, it was impossible to brazenly transport them into the military. He would need to devise some form of disguise. At that moment, a cacophony erupted outside the door. Among the voices, one was unmistakably familiar to Li Chengqian. Come out, Li Chengqian. You dare to send someone to assassinate this king, you must provide an explanation. Otherwise, I shall dismantle your princely residence today. Another voice chimed in, yes, Crown Prince, come forth and deliver justice for His Highness, the King of Wei. Upon hearing the well-known voice of Wei Wang Litai, Li Chengqian could not help but smirk coldly. It seemed that something was amiss today, after Li Shimin's scolding. Litai had yet to receive his due reprimand. This was indeed a fleeting opportunity. Once he ventured into the vast desert, there would be no chance to teach his good brother a lesson. Litai, emboldened by Li Shimin's favor, had always looked down upon him, but this was not all. The most egregious incident occurred during a hunting expedition organized by Li Shimin, where Li Chengqian accidentally fell from his horse. Li Shimin, displeased, sent Li Tai to chastise Li Chengqian for his indulgence and neglect of horsemanship. Li Tai, disregarding the early morning where Su Ningyu was still in bed, barged into his chamber and unleashed a torrent of reproaches. The mere recollection of these events ignited Li Chengqian's ire. Not only did Li Tai show him immense disrespect, but Li Shimin's harshness also vexed him. Forcing a cripple to practice horsemanship, was that not sheer cruelty? Su Ningyu displayed no sign of panic and calmly suggested, Your Highness, shall I assist you in handling this matter? Haha, such trifles do not require my lady's intervention. You may retire to the inner quarters, replied Li Chengqian, as he strode purposefully towards the door. As the saying goes, dragons give birth to 9 offspring, each unique. Li Chengqian bore a striking resemblance to Li Shimin. Both possessing handsome features, tall and slender physiques, and slightly dark complexions. In contrast, Li Tai was rotund, with a broad face, full cheeks, a modest nose, and skin as fair and delicate as a woman's. His demeanor was always calm and poised, his words and actions perfectly measured, making one feel as if enveloped in a gentle spring breeze. However, when it came to Li Chengqian, Li Tai never missed an opportunity to be scornful. As Li Chengqian approached, Li Tai momentarily froze. His elder brother, the Crown Prince, had previously been his equal adversary, yet in recent years, he had chosen to avoid confrontation. He had anticipated a similar outcome this time, relishing the chance to vent while ostensibly defending their father's honor, thus enhancing his own reputation for filial piety. However, he was taken aback by Li Chengqian's audacity to emerge. The prospect of dragging Li Chengqian to the ancestral temple to atone filled him with exhilaration. Once their father awakened, he would surely be rewarded handsomely, perhaps even bequeath the title of Crown Prince himself. With this thought, he pointed a finger at Li Chengqian's nose and declared, You Li Chengqian, you dare to send someone to assassinate this king and even insult our father in the court. Today, I shall teach you a lesson in place of our father. Li Chengqian regarded Li Tai's plump visage with a cold sneer, remaining silent. Li Tai, misinterpreting his silence as guilt, became even more relentless. Li Qingqian, you will accompany me to the ancestral temple this instant to kneel and repent before our ancestors. He moved to seize him. Repent. I shall repent to your father. Li Qingqian's lips curled into a mischievous smile at the sight of Li Tai's round face. Thinking how satisfying it would be to slap that face. At this moment, Li Tai had approached him closely. Li Qingqian, will you walk on your own? Or shall I escort you? This good brother should be nicknamed Timely Rain. Once I venture into the vast desert, I shall regret not having the opportunity to teach you a lesson. Suddenly raising his hand, he struck Li Tai across the face, causing him to stagger, his expression one of utter disbelief. You dare to hit me? You seek death. He had several attendants with him, yet none dared to act against the crown prince, they could only hurl insults. You dare to strike the king of Wei. We shall certainly inform his majesty and bring down punishment upon you. The crown prince, disloyal and unfilial, will surely be scorned by the world. If you possess even a shred of conscience, you should kneel and apologize to the king of Wei. I dare you, he exclaimed, and once more delivered a resounding slap to Li Tai's face. Chapter 8. The lame one strikes the fat one. At this moment, Li Tai had also come to his senses. Relying on the favor bestowed upon him by Li Shimin, he had never feared the crown prince. Moreover, with Li Qingqian having committed a grievous offense, he was determined to retaliate. Though he was portly, his weight was sufficient, it posed no challenge to strike Li Qingqian, the lame prince. Yet, Li Qingqian was undeterred by the prospect of being struck. He boldly declared, I am still the crown prince, a sovereign. You are Wang Wei, a subject. Furthermore, I am the elder brother, and you are the younger. An elder brother is like a father. Should you dare to lay a hand on me, it would mark you as disloyal and unfilial. If this were to spread, how do you think the world would perceive you? Li Tai's fist hung frozen in midair, his expression shifting unpredictably. Despite having bested Li Qingqian in their previous encounter, the succession was still uncertain, and he could not afford to leave a stain of disloyalty and unfiliality upon his reputation. Li Qingqian, relentless, unleashed a flurry of slaps upon Li Tai's face, causing his large head to bob like a rattling drum, while his corpulent body staggered backward. You do not go too far. Li Tai, not a fool, refused to remain a mere target. After a futile protest, he turned and fled. You shan't escape. Though Li Qingqian was hindered by his limp, he was still able to pursue the portly figure. With a few strides, he caught up and, lifting his lame leg, delivered a forceful kick to Li Tai's backside. With a loud cry of despair, Li Tai lost his balance and fell heavily to the ground, his face covered in dust. The attendants, witnessing the scene, hurried to surround him, helping him to his feet. Gritting his teeth in frustration, his face a shade of fury, he dared not linger. With a fierce glare directed at Li Qingqian, his voice trembled as he commanded, Go. Quickly assist this king in departing. Li Qingqian stood rooted in place, watching the comically disheveled retreat of Li Tai, a smirk of mockery adorning his face. Ha ha, dear brother, whenever you wish to visit, you are always welcome. Upon hearing these words, Li Tai's ire escalated, yet he could only grind his teeth in silence, vowing inwardly that once their father awakened, he would settle the score. Observing Li Tai's entourage live in disarray, Li Qingqian laughed heartily, feeling a sense of fulfillment in the city of Chaman. The following morning, as dawn broke, the gates of the palace slowly opened. Li Qingqian, dressed in resplendent attire, strode leisurely out of the eastern palace, accompanied by a throng of subordinates. They bore an array of boxes, large and small, creating an impressive procession that drew the attention of palace servants and court officials alike. What is His Highness up to? A young eunuch whispered, his eyes filled with curiosity. Who knows? But have you heard about yesterday's South events in court? Another court official responded in hushed tones, shrouded in mystery. How could one not have heard? The crown prince is... The speaker was abruptly silenced by a companion's urgent interruption. Hush. Do you wish to invite trouble? The individual glanced around nervously, fearful of being overheard. Leading the procession, Li Shimin listened to the murmurs around him. A subtle smile gracing his lips, revealing a hint of satisfaction. This was precisely the effect he desired. Chang'an, despite its fertile lands within the Guangdong Plain, was constrained in size. As the population continues to grow, the local agricultural output fails to meet the rising demand. Consequently, to sustain the operations of the capital of the Tang Empire, it is imperative to mobilize resources from across the nation. However, the waterways are rendered impractical for transport due to the turbulent currents of the Yellow River in the Sanmenxia section, severely hampering the grain transport. This predicament compelled the Tang to establish an extensive transportation system, which inevitably increased the burden on localities. Yet, amidst the historically fertile land of formidable leaders, no one has dared to rise against the authority, primarily due to the unparalleled military prowess of Li Shimin, which instilled fear of rebellion in all. With the gradual opening of the Silk Road, Chang'an has evolved beyond being merely the capital of the Hoxia, it has transformed into a global metropolis. The commercial market of Chang'an is divided into two sections, the East Market and the West Market. The East Market, situated southeast of the Imperial Palace, caters to the elite, offering luxury goods such as silk, jewelry, and porcelain. In contrast, the West Market, located southwest near the commoners' residential areas and a hub for foreign merchants, is a vibrant melting pot of diverse goods ranging from everyday necessities to exotic treasures. For those acquainted with reliable merchants, one could even procure items rare in the general market. As Li Shimin stepped out of the palace, he found himself in a dilemma over whether to visit the East or West Market. After a moment's contemplation, he turned and commanded, "Split into two groups. One will accompany me to the East Market, while the other stands by in the West Market." His intention for this day was to indulge in extravagant shopping, both to conceal the gold and silver he carried and to project an image of a prince who had relinquished his struggles, ready to revel in the final moments of indulgence. This would reassure all ministers and Li Tai, allowing him to join the military expedition without hesitation. The East Market was not far from the palace, merely a quarter of an hour's journey. Due to the large entourage accompanying him, their passage attracted considerable attention from passers-by. Upon entering the East Market, the cacophony of voices mingled with the aromas of spices and wines, as if attempting to engulf one in the intoxicating whirlpool of the prosperous Tang. The morning light cast a golden sheen upon the glazed tiles of the shop rooftops, transforming the entire street into a gilded spectacle, with even the airborne dust appearing as if sprinkled with gold dust. This marketplace stretched for thousands of paces, replete with silk merchants, porcelain shops, and goldsmiths, a myriad of stalls beyond counting. Li Shimin was determined to engage in a spree of consumption. Deeming it unnecessary to browse individually, with a wave of his hand, he summoned the finest merchants from the street, declaring, "Bring forth your best wares, for I wish to make purchases." The Tang royal family was relatively progressive, with even Li Shimin frequently venturing into the streets. However, it was indeed a rarity for the crown prince to personally shop, drawing an eager crowd of onlookers. After a short while, a man dressed in a grey long gown, with a slightly tanned complexion and an unremarkable appearance, emerged from the throng. Observing this, Li Shimin raised an eyebrow and inquired, "Are you the finest merchant of this street?" The man knelt on one knee, responding respectfully, "Your Highness, I am but a merchant, whether I am the finest remains for your Highness to judge." Intrigued by the man's poise and demeanor, Li Shimin replied, "Very well, present your best goods. Food, essentials, entertainment, and sights, this princess desires it all, yet remember, it must be of the utmost quality, otherwise, do not blame me if I tarnish your reputation." The man rose, maintaining a tone of utmost respect, "Your Highness, please wait a moment, I shall return promptly." With that, he signaled to the crowd, and immediately someone brought a stool for Li Shimin. Almost half an hour had passed when, under the man's direction, the goods began to be displayed at the street corner, one after another. Chapter 9, The Arsenal of War. A dozen wooden frames erected by 7 or 8 textile merchants displayed exquisite fabrics cascading like a vibrant waterfall, Yuesho's sheer gossamer silks, shoe brocades embroidered with golden phoenixes, then countless other luxurious satins. Then, Western merchants arrived with dozens of large chests, unveiling carpets studded with pigeon blood rubies, luminous pearls the size of longan fruits, and an array of dazzling gemstones. Following these were countless porcelain wares and delicate gold and silver ornaments, stretching nearly 80 meters in a breathtaking spectacle of opulence. Truth be told, Li Shimin, as the crown prince, had witnessed grandeur before. Yet even he was awestruck by this display. He marveled inwardly, such a scene was rare even in the long annals of Chinese history. The splendor of the Tang Dynasty was indeed unparalleled. How does your highness find these treasures? Do they meet your discerning eye? A man's voice pulled Li Shimin from his reverie. Excellent. Have them all delivered to the Eastern Palace, he replied before turning to a middle-aged man behind him, Duli, the chief steward of the Eastern Palace. A man of no ordinary background, Duli had been gifted to him by Emperor Gaozu, Li Yuan, and was among his most trusted confidants, second only to Ningruyu. Steward Du, settle the accounts. I shall proceed to the Western market. Join me once you are finished. Had it been anyone else, such an extravagant purchase would have warranted caution, but Duli merely lowered his gaze slightly and replied calmly, as you command, your highness. With that, Li Shimin boarded his carriage and departed for the Western market. Inside the carriage, his expression grew pensive, his fingers absently rubbing together. According to his plan, the nobility of Chong'an would by now have received word of his lavish spending. For in the world of commerce and politics, none thrived without the other. 9 out of 10 merchants in the Eastern market had ties to high-ranking officials. All eyes would now be fixed on the Western market. Seizing this moment, he intended to arrange certain matters. As the carriage rolled forward, Li Shimin repeatedly lifted the curtain to observe the streets. After roughly 10 minutes, he thought, this should be the place. Swiftly, he retrieved a set of clothes hidden within the carriage and disguised himself. Then, he called to the driver, I shall disembark here. Proceed to the Western market without me. As the carriage slowed, Li Shimin slipped out and swiftly disappeared into a nearby alleyway. After several turns, he arrived before a grand residence, its gate adorned with a plaque bearing 2 bold characters, Du Manor. This was the estate of Du Ruhui, a prominent minister under Emperor Taizong. Though Du Ruhui had passed away in the 6th year of the Shangguan era, and his family had since been marginalized from the corridors of power, the Du clan still wielded some influence in court. Li Shimin had come here for one reason. Du Ruhui's second son, Du He, the Duke of Shenyang and consort to Princess Chengyang, was one of his most steadfast allies. Inside the manor, 4 men sat around a table. At the head was Du He, flanked by Du Zhongluan, Zhao Jie, and Li Anyan. Without exception, these men were loyalists of the crown prince. Accused of plotting rebellion, they had resigned themselves to death, until yesterday's events rekindled a glimmer of hope. Now, they gathered here to devise their next move. Du He gently caressed his cheek, a look of concern etched upon his face. Esteemed guests, it is only by the occasion of my wife, Princess Chengyang's birthday, that I have summoned you here. Time is of the essence. Let us swiftly deliberate on His Highness the Crown Prince's intentions regarding the military expedition. Among those present, the only truly capable individual was Du Zhongluan. Historically, he had been implicated in the conspiracy of Li Shimin and subsequently exiled, only to be summoned back by Li Shi, ultimately ascending to the esteemed position of Chancellor. In truth, these individuals largely looked to Du Zhongluan for guidance. Du Zhongluan was tall and slender, his visage gaunt, clad in a loose scholarly robe that exuded an air of profound intellect. His demeanor was steady and composed, marked by grace in every gesture. Noticing the silence in the room, Du Zhongluan stroked the short beard on his chin and remarked, the Crown Prince's participation in the military campaign presents an undeniable opportunity, however. The manner in which this opportunity is seized rests solely upon His Highness. Our immediate priority is to establish contact with the Eastern Palace. The others fell into deep contemplation. Each of them had been wronged, their movements restricted, and merely being able to convene at Du's residence was a feat in itself. To hastily communicate with the Eastern Palace could prove perilous, risking further complications. Just then, a guard entered, announcing, "My lords, there is someone outside seeking an audience." Claiming to be from the Eastern Palace. Upon hearing this, their eyes brightened with intrigue. It seemed fortune favored them. He rose promptly, quickly. "Invite him to the rear hall." He turned to his companions. "Gentlemen, the front hall is teeming with onlookers. It is prudent to exercise caution." They all agreed, rising in unison, for they were acutely aware that their earlier conspiracy had been betrayed, leading to their exposure. "Your Highness, what brings you here?" They had barely settled in the rear hall when Li Shimin, dressed in plain attire and limping, made his entrance. He gestured for them to remain seated and stated, "I have some urgent matters to entrust to you. Due to the pressing nature of time, I shall be brief." He produced an envelope from within his robes. As a time traveler, he understood that Du Zhongluan among them possessed the greatest capability. "Zhongluan, take this. Once I depart, you are to act according to the directives outlined within." Du Zhongluan stepped forward to accept the envelope. Li Shimin continued, "Rest assured, you have treated me as a statesman. And I shall repay your loyalty in kind. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness." He concluded, "I will take my leave now. Remember to follow the instructions in the envelope." With that, he turned and exited. The remaining individuals exchanged glances, and after a prolonged silence, he remarked, "I cannot shake the feeling that today's crown prince is markedly different from before." Du Zhongluan nodded slightly. "Indeed. It appears His Highness has grown disillusioned with the emperor and resolved to take decisive action." The others all nodded in agreement. As Li Shimin left Du's residence, he limped his way towards the Western market. Fortunately, the distance was not great, otherwise it would have posed a considerable challenge for one with a limp. The Western market was unlike the Eastern market, which was filled with well-decorated shops. It was predominantly comprised of small stalls. During this summer season, the market bustled with activity. An array of snack vendors stretching as far as the eye could see, while in more spacious areas, skilled performers showcased their talents, and in quiet corners, fortune-telling priests set up their stalls. The news of Li Shimin's extravagant spending at the East Market had spread far and wide. At the street corner stood a dozen or so guards. After all, securing a contract with Li Shimin would yield enough commission for them to squander for a lifetime. Upon turning the corner into the West Market, Li Shimin surprised onlookers by not descending from his carriage but rather approaching on foot, eliciting expressions of astonishment from many. Some individuals in the crowd, their faces shifting with unease, hastily retreated. Li Shimin observed this with keen awareness, recognizing that these individuals were likely sent to monitor him. Yet he remained unconcerned. Once they discovered he was merely visiting He and others, he would already have departed Chang'an. In a light-hearted tone, he remarked, "Oh dear. Why are there so many people here? Are they all vendors?" No sooner had the words left his lips than the guards surged forward, swiftly encircling him. "We humbly welcome Your Highness, we are at your service." In truth, his objective of distracting the high-ranking officials and meeting He had been achieved, rendering further indulgence in the West Market unnecessary. However, he still sought to procure a particular item, one that was crucial for his success in pacifying the vast desert and subsequently engaging in a prolonged contest against the Tang Dynasty. I truly do not require so many of you. Here is the deal: whoever can find the most alchemical gold and stones within the hour shall be the one I choose. The art of alchemy was in vogue during the Tang Dynasty, and the materials utilized were predominantly metals and stones, aside from precious herbs like ginseng. Among these, sulfur and saltpeter were precisely what Li Shimin needed. With these two components, he could create gunpowder, a revolutionary weapon of warfare. The guards displayed no surprise at his request. After all, it was customary for nobles to dabble in alchemy, and they promptly dispersed to commence their search. Chapter 10. The oath. Li Shimin found himself with little to occupy his time, thus he meandered through the bustling streets of the Western Market. Merchants, upon noticing his presence, eagerly approached to promote their wares. Your Highness, this is exquisite deer hide, would you be interested? The price is negotiable. Your Highness, I have fine sheepskin from the outskirts. Of exceptional quality, if you desire, I can offer a discount. However, the matter of money held significance for him in the future. And he had no intention of squandering it unnecessarily. He disregarded their entreaties and continued his leisurely stroll. The streets were lined with an array of goods, spices, silk, and porcelain adorned the stalls, while the air was thick with the vibrant essence of the marketplace. At this moment, Li Shimin relished the experience of wandering. For it had been ages since he had encountered such a scene. Suddenly, a man adorned with a distinctive headscarf unique to the Hu people blocked his path. The merchant's face bore the characteristic shrewdness of one in trade, with squinting eyes and a sycophantic smile. Displeased at the interruption, Li Shimin furrowed his brow, ready to express his irritation. However, the man remained unperturbed and leaned in closer, lowering his voice in a conspiratorial manner. Your Highness, I possess exceptional slaves. All from the western regions. Would you care to take a look? The words doused Li Shimin's ire like a bucket of cold water. He found himself intrigued. Noticing his interest, the Hu merchant's smile grew even more ingratiating as he stepped aside, gesturing invitingly. This way, Your Highness. I assure you a feast for the eyes. Compelled by curiosity, Li Shimin nodded and followed the merchant down a narrow alley. At the alley's end, several carts were stationed, their curtains partially drawn, revealing flickering shadows within. The merchant lifted the curtain to unveil several beautiful women clad in exotic attire. They lowered their heads, displaying a mix of trepidation and an alluring air of mystery from distant lands. Li Shimin squinted. It was no wonder that the Tang Dynasty had taken to the practice of keeping Hu courtesans, for these foreign women possessed an undeniable charm. What do you think? Your Highness? The merchant asked, rubbing his hands together in anticipation. Li Shimin did not respond immediately, instead he strolled around the cart, his gaze fixating on one particular woman. She was extraordinarily beautiful, with a high nose and distinct features, embodying the deep contours typical of the Western peoples. Her complexion was not the usual whitish hue of Western women, but rather as fair as milk. Moreover, there was a wild glint in her eyes, contrasting sharply with her appearance, reminiscent of a spirited steed, beckoning one to conquer. The merchant observed the scene with keen eyes, a look of delight spreading across his face as he edged closer. Your Highness, are you taken by her beauty? You truly have discerning taste. I acquired her at a high price. He leaned in conspiratorially, whispering, it is said she boasts the bloodline of the Takek royal family. Previously, had Li Shimin heard of a woman possessing Takek royal lineage, he would have fled in alarm, for the bloodline of the Tang Dynasty was not to be sullied. Yet now, those concerns seemed trivial. Name your price. I shall take her, he declared resolutely. The foreign merchant grinned from ear to ear upon hearing this. As you wish. Your Highness. I shall arrange for the goods to be delivered to your residence shortly. At that moment, the woman inside the carriage suddenly glared at Li Shimin with fury, spewing a torrent of incomprehensible words. Li Shimin, bitterly baffled, muttered under his breath, what gibberish is this? Anticipating that the brokers would soon conclude their business, he turned and strode away. Emerging from the narrow alley, he found the brokers already assembled. They crowded around him, bowing respectfully, greetings, Your Highness. With pressing matters awaiting his attention, Li Shimin had no time for idle chatter. Report, he commanded. How much of the goods have you secured? Silence met his question. Just as he began to wonder at their hesitation, Chen Wugang, the broker from the eastern market, stepped forward from the rear. Your Highness, Chen Wugang said deferentially. Had you but informed this humble servant of your needs, there would have been no need for Your Highness to trouble yourself with a visit to the western market. This revelation took Li Shimin slightly aback. Evidently, this man held considerable influence among the brokers. Li Shimin remarked with a faint smile, it seems I underestimated your capabilities. By the way, I don't believe I've caught your name. You flatter me, Your Highness, Chen Wugang replied with a modest bow. This unworthy one is called Chen Wugang. Very well, Li Chengqian nodded. I entrust this matter to you. Whatever materials you can procure within a day, I shall take no delays. Chen Wugang remained composed, offering another slight bow. Understood, Your Highness. With the procurement settled, Li Chengqian saw no reason to linger and promptly departed. Upon returning to the Eastern Palace, he found Su Ningyu seated in the main hall, her expression serene yet tinged with hesitation as she regarded him. Though years of marriage had attuned him to her subtleties, he detected a trace of sorrow beneath her calm facade. "Where?" he murmured, stepping closer. "What weighs on your heart?" Su Ningyu did not answer immediately, her gaze unwavering. Li Chengqian reached out, gently caressing her exquisite face. "Did we not vow to share all things as husband and wife? What troubles you?" "Your Highness," she began haltingly. "I understand the path you tread cannot be hindered by sentiment. Yet I cannot help but voice my fears. What shall become of me and our children once you are gone?" Li Chengqian's heart clenched with understanding. Through his actions, Su Ningyu had discerned his true intent, not rebellion, but a prolonged exile beyond the Tang borders. He chuckled softly, ruffling her hair. "What nonsense is this? I would never abandon my wife and children." A flicker of hope lit her eyes. "Truly? But if you take me, Xiang-Er, and Ju-Er with you, would we not draw undue attention?" "Set your mind at ease," he reassured her. "I have made arrangements. Tonight you shall take the children to your family's home. Then spread word that you have severed ties with me." Su Ningyu, decisive as ever, rose without hesitation. "Then I shall make the preparations at once." Li Chengqian was momentarily taken aback. Such resolve was the hallmark of a true strategist. 2 days later, the assembled forces mobilized as planned. In the early morning, the mist had yet to dissipate, and the horizon still bore the pale hue of dawn. However, outside the Mingde gate of Chong'an, a formidable army had already gathered, their might seemingly poised to pierce through the veil of fog. At this moment, Li Chengqian sat astride a pristine white warhorse, clad in resplendent armor, with a golden inlaid broadsword hanging at his waist. The crimson tassels on his helmet danced in the morning breeze. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze sweeping across the sprawling forces of the Tang Dynasty, an amalgamation of pride and trepidation swelling within him. The Tang military was undeniably formidable, a source of pride for him as the crown prince, yet the thought of facing such an army in the future filled him with uncertainty. Could he truly withstand the might of the Tang for the long haul? A sudden thunderous drumbeat jolted Li Chengqian from his reverie. The rhythmic pounding resonated like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The front lines of heavily armored infantry, wielding long swords, glimmered coldly in the morning light, their movements synchronized, each step echoing the sound of clashing armor, akin to the low rumble of thunder. To their left and right flanks, light cavalry brandished iron spears, short crossbows slung at their waists, encased in dark armor. At the forefront, Qing Jijia raised his hand, prompting the cavalry to brandish their spears and rein in their mounts. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" The neighing of horses intertwined with the soldiers' roars, creating a heart-stirring cacophony. With Li Shimin now in a state of unconsciousness, the responsibility of rallying the troops fell squarely on Li Chengqian's shoulders. He welcomed this duty, recognizing it as an opportune moment to win the hearts of the soldiers. Ascending a high platform, he squinted against the light and suddenly unsheathed his broadsword, his voice ringing out with unprecedented vigor. "Warriors, is this expedition daunting?" "No. Not afraid. Not afraid." The soldiers grasped their weapons tightly, raising their arms in unison. "Indeed. The Shuayan have brazenly invaded our lands, oppressing our people and dishonoring our elders and children. I cannot fathom their audacity. They bear swords. Do we, the sons of the Tang, lack weapons?" The soldiers erupted into an even more invigorated cheer. "We have swords. We have swords. In this campaign, I shall lead the charge," he declared. "Should any among you witness me retreating in battle, you are to slay me." With that vow, he severed a lock of his hair with his broadsword as a testament to his words. Li Chengqian's bold gesture ignited an unprecedented surge of morale. "We vow to live and die alongside your highness." With that, the thunderous sound of drums once again filled the air, and the army surged forward like a tidal wave, stirring up a whirlwind of dust. Chapter 11. The expedition. At this moment, the ministers, both civil and military, gathered at the city gate to bid farewell, their expressions revealing a tapestry of emotions. They could never have anticipated that the usually timid Li Chengqian would articulate such a profound statement. Wei Qijingda pressed his lips together and remarked, "After all, he is His Majesty's son, he truly embodies the essence of his father's youth." The assembly fell silent, each individual wearing an even more intricate expression. Most of them had fought alongside Li Shimin for many years, and Li Chengqian's recent display strikingly mirrored that of the young Li Shimin. The martial generals, in particular, found their thoughts swelling with nostalgia, as in that fleeting moment they were reminded of the stature, appearance, and vigor of the young Li Shimin. Chapter 12. In sincerity. As Chen Yaojin was summoned to the command tent for a meeting, Li Chengqian found himself bestowed with a brief respite. Seizing this opportunity, he resolved to win over the hearts of the soldiers. After a leisurely stroll, he ultimately came to a halt beside a flickering campfire. At that moment, the group of soldiers was preparing their meal, and upon noticing his presence, they all rose to pay their respects. "Your Highness!" they exclaimed in unison. Li Chengqian quickly stepped forward to assist the foremost soldier, saying, "Within the military camp, we are all comrades, regardless of rank, there is no need for such formalities." The soldier, visibly taken aback, replied, "Your Highness, I am but a simple man." Chapter 13. Reluctance. Amidst his contemplations, a cacophony of heated disputes erupted outside the tent. "We are under the orders of the Grand General to search all tents. How dare you oppose us? Step aside quickly, or face the unyielding consequences of military law." These tents contain the personal belongings of His Highness the Crown Prince. Even if the Grand General himself were to arrive, he would not dare to conduct a search. What are you in comparison to that? Upon hearing this exchange, Li Chengqian could not help but think, this is bad. Truly, what one fears often comes to pass. His apprehension regarding the inspection of his belongings stemmed not from the fear of his substantial wealth being discovered, for this gold and silver was amassed during his time in the East. Chapter 14. A narrow escape. Li Ji turned his head to see Chen Yaojin, his brow furrowing slightly. "Jie, what brings you here?" Chen Yaojin, without further ado, grasped Li Shiji's arm and whispered, "Brother Li, may I have a word?" With that, he unceremoniously pulled Li Shiji to a secluded corner. Li Ji found himself somewhat bewildered by this sudden action. However, noticing Cheng's grave expression, he suppressed his irritation and quietly inquired, "What is it? What has happened?" Chen Yaojin scanned the surroundings and, upon confirming their privacy, lowered his voice. "Mao Gong. Do not investigate further." The sound originated from the Crown Prince. Chapter 15. The assassination. Noticing his silence, Chen Yaojin felt a sense of dissatisfaction and loosened the reins, allowing his steed to follow him. In truth, those courtesans had been released by him the previous night, to prevent Chen Yaojin from harboring any concerns that might lead him to search through his belongings. He promptly reassured, "Rest assured, I have sent those courtesans away." "Oh, that is indeed good," Chen Yaojin replied, a hint of melancholy flickering across his face. This expression struck him as peculiar. How could such a cunning and calculating individual display such emotions? Chen Yaojin appeared contemplative, as if lost in reminiscence, before he spoke slowly. Chapter 16. The downfall of King Wei. In truth, Chen Yaojin accurately discerned Li Chengqian's intentions. He aimed to firmly establish Li Tai's guilt before the eyes of two esteemed ministers. Furthermore, he harbored an ulterior motive, hoping to create the illusion that both the Cheng and Li factions were entangled in the royal succession conflict. Li Chengqian remained oblivious to whether there existed in the Tang Dynasty any clandestine methods of concealing poison within one's teeth, though he had witnessed such a scenario in a television drama in his previous life. To mitigate any potential risks, he commanded the assassin coldly, shatter all his teeth. After a moment of contemplation, Qin Yaojin resolved that it was prudent to conduct an immediate interrogation, for this matter was of utmost importance to Li Shimin. Chapter 17, Cramping with a superficial understanding of the situation, Li Chengchen slowly approached the assassin, gazing down upon him from a position of superiority. I shall grant you one final opportunity, will you confess or remain silent? The assassin revealed a disdainful smile, replying, Li Chengchen, you may as well kill me. Yet your own demise is not far off. I shall await you in the afterlife. Rest assured, I am not destined to perish just yet, however, you will certainly suffer. He retorted, drawing a long knife from the waist of a soldier nearby before crouching down. I once perused a medical text that stated. Chapter 18, The unmatched General Li Chengchen sat alone within his tent, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced across his face. With a slight frown, he gazed through the partially drawn curtains, peering into the world beyond. Although the army was in a state of rest, the throng of soldiers surrounded his tent, forming an impenetrable barrier like a fortified bastion. These men, dispatched by Qin Yaojin, meant well, seeking to protect him from any further assassination attempts. Yet, in the face of such vigilant care, Li Chengchen found himself engulfed in unease. The stringent watch made it impossible for him to seek out Duli and Besheng. Chapter 19, The Awakening of the True Dragon, Thunder and Rain, all granting imperial favor. Why does this fellow resemble a relentless specter? Not taking the opportunity to rest and instead coming to disturb me. Li Chengchen remarked with irritation, haven't you retired for the night? Does General Cheng also intend to share my slumber? At that moment, Qin Yaojin had already entered the tent, prompting Shui Rengui to clasp his hands in salute and say, Then I shall take my leave. Very well, Li Chengchen nodded in acknowledgement. After Shui Rengui departed, Qin Yaojin observed the toppled desk and the lamp in disarray. Feeling somewhat puzzled. Your Highness, what performance is this? Mind your own business. I intend to rest now, General Cheng. Chapter 20, The storm approaches. As the wind rises, Zheng Quan found himself at a loss amidst the lively chatter of the crowd, unable to interject. With a weary gesture, he signaled for silence. His Majesty has awoken and summons you all. However, as he has only just regained consciousness and his strength has yet to fully return, I urge you to be concise. Upon hearing this, the faces of the assembled officials brightened with joy and they promptly pushed open the door to enter. At that moment, Li Shimin reclined against his bed, slowly sipping a medicinal concoction, appearing somewhat frail. Upon seeing the gathered generals, a smile graced his features, and in a hoarse voice, he greeted, You have arrived. Chapter 21, The Final Freedom. At this moment, Li Chengchen, who lay asleep in the carriage, was startled awake by a sudden chill. As he opened his eyes, he was met with an expanse of darkness. The army had begun to set up camp. This sight astonished him. How long had he been asleep? Had night truly fallen? Noticing his awakening, Qin Yaojin, who had been vigilantly watching over him, remarked, Your Highness, you are awake. You have slumbered quite a while. It is already the hour of the rat. Li Chengchen stifled a yawn and stretched lazily. Have I truly slept the entire day? At that moment, a solitary rider approached swiftly from the distance. The moonlight shone brightly, illuminating the scene as the army's sentinels. Chapter 22, Decisiveness. Accompanied by a jarring clash of metal, Qin Yaojin was filled with astonishment as his iron spear was unexpectedly knocked from his grasp, flying far away, while his hands trembled violently from the impact. At that moment, Shui Rengui had already dashed to the side of the carriage, urging, Your Highness, we must depart swiftly. Upon hearing this voice, Li Chengchen was overwhelmed with joy and promptly leaped from the carriage. Shui Rengui, wielding his spear, made several swift thrusts, severing the reins that tethered the carriage to the horses. He then seized the back of Li Chengchen's collar, pulling him onto the horse. Your Highness, we must hurry. Qin Yaojin watched, alarmed, as Li Chengchen prepared to act right before his very eyes. Chapter 23, The Timeless Horseshoe Eye. the solitary heir of the Tang Dynasty and the current crown prince, find myself in a dire predicament as my father, swayed by treacherous individuals, seeks to apprehend me. I hereby vow that in my lifetime, I shall eradicate those treacherous ministers and restore order. I ask all valiant warriors, do you wish to accompany me in this endeavor? Should anyone be unwilling, you may seize me now and deliver me to the court in exchange for wealth and honor. From the moment these individuals stole horses from the military camp, their path of no return was irrevocably set. Furthermore, human nature leans towards conformity. None would dare to reveal their cowardice in front of so many, fearing the label of a petty person enamored with riches and glory. In that instant, the assembly of soldiers. Chapter 24. A ruler and subjects, father and son. Uncle Bao, you truly are remarkable. When it comes to offering supplements, given your frail health, it is I who should be presenting them to you. Furthermore, what precious medicinal herbs are absent from my palace? Why would I need such trifling supplements? Qin Chiong waved his hand dismissively and rose to his feet, saying, Your Majesty, you are mistaken. While it is indeed true that your palace is abundant with rare medicinal herbs, you have yet to experience the benefits of my supplements. As he spoke, Qin Chiong executed a single arm flourish, adopting a stance, and then unleashed 3 punches in succession. Each strike resonated with a fierce sound that pierced the air, exuding an imposing aura, causing the flickering light in the room to dance erratically. Observing this, Li Shimin's eyes glimmered with a hint of astonishment. Chapter 25. Kidnapping and extortion. Before Li Ji could utter a word, Beixiong Hui interjected with a thunderous voice, Our prince has decreed that you have but the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn to consider our terms. Once that time elapses, every quarter of an hour, we shall sever a finger from Chen Yaojin. Once all 10 fingers are gone, you shall behold his severed head. Upon hearing this, Li Ji could only manage a bitter smile. Their tactics had clearly caught him off guard. What you are doing is no different from the actions of bandits, he admonished. I urge you to reconsider your misguided course and return General Cheng. His Majesty is known for his magnanimity, perhaps he may show leniency towards you. Beixiong Hui, truly a fool, showed no sign of remorse or understanding. Chapter 26. The untrustworthy bandit Ho Junji, I implore you to release these Hu women at once, otherwise, do not blame me for lacking compassion. Ho Junji paused momentarily, a flicker of displeasure crossing his eyes. Yet, he swiftly masked it and replied awkwardly, I understand. With that, he turned to the soldiers behind him. Did you not hear His Highness the Crown Prince? Act swiftly, lest His Highness be left with no mercy in the future. Li Chengqian sighed inwardly. It seemed this individual harbored resentment towards him. Nevertheless, he had no choice but to proceed in this manner. At that moment, the Hu woman suddenly began to chatter incessantly. Li Chengqian. Chapter 27. Deception and intrigue. They galloped through the night, reaching the early hours of the next day. Along the way, they encountered numerous checkpoints. Yet each was deftly navigated by Li Chengqian, who skillfully leveraged his identity as the crown prince to deceive the guards. Your Highness, we are nearing the gates of Zhongye. What course of action shall we take next? Ho Junji inquired, drawing closer on his steed, his voice laced with a hint of concern. Just as Li Chengqian was about to respond, the distant sound of thundering hooves suddenly echoed through the air. Turning towards the commotion, they beheld a cavalry unit of approximately 100 riders swiftly approaching, a cloud of dust billowing in their wake, radiating an imposing aura. An immediate tension enveloped the group as they grasped their weapons tightly, their gazes sharpened with vigilance. Chapter 28. I do not regret the officers were inebriated. Completely unprepared for the sudden downfall brought upon them by the crown prince, they were swiftly subdued. At this moment, Li Wu realized that any claims of imperial decree or military rewards were mere fabrications. Li Chengqian was indeed plotting a rebellion. He opened his mouth to shout for assistance. But before he could utter a word, a rag was forcefully stuffed into it. Observing this, Li Chengqian felt a sense of satisfaction. Yet he understood that it was not merely his intelligence or the folly of the Tang soldiers that led to this moment, but rather the fact that he was the son of Li Shimin, the crown prince, which rendered Li Wu entirely defenseless against him. Chapter 29 The Yellow Among Men. Having spoken, Li Chengqian led the group towards the city gate, simultaneously instructing the soldiers beside him, "Let him in." The messenger from the governor of Zhongye, while delivering the imperial edict, paused mid-sentence, raising his head to find Li Chengqian gazing at him with a cheerful smile. As the envoy was among the elite cavalry of the imperial guard, he naturally recognized Li Chengqian, his expression one of sheer disbelief. "Your Highness." "Ha ha. Indeed it is I. Bring forth the imperial decree. I wish to see what my father has proclaimed." Upon finishing his words, the soldier unceremoniously seized the edict from the messenger's hands and handed it over. Chapter 30 Blade against blade, soldier against soldier. Having run for merely a short while, Li Chengqian began to struggle, his eyelids heavy with fatigue, nearly toppling from his steed. The injury to his leg was also proving troublesome, further impeding his ability to ride. However, with time of the essence, halting for rest was not an option. The cacophony of galloping horses around him heightened the peril. A fall from his mount would undoubtedly spell disaster. Shui Rengui and Beixiong Hui, observing his plight, swiftly maneuvered their horses to flank him, one on either side, providing support while guiding the reins. Their exceptional martial prowess was crucial, for any misstep could culminate in a catastrophic collision between the three frenzied steeds, sealing the fate of all involved. Chapter 31 The Emperor's Ruthlessness. My desire is simple, as long as we can apprehend that rebellious son, the truth shall be revealed. With that said, I cast my gaze upon the assembly and continued, "Whom do you propose we send to Zhongye to capture Li Chengqian?" The garrison in Zhongye comprises merely tens of thousands, still within the borders of the Tang Dynasty. It could be said that with the imperial forces, it would be a trivial task to seize control. However, this is no simple undertaking. After all, swords are blind, and should we inadvertently cause Li Chengqian's demise, it would lead to considerable trouble. Furthermore, the provisions for the military operations against the grasslands are all stockpiled in Zhongye. If Li Chengqian were to lose his senses, he might set everything ablaze. Chapter 32 The Occupation of the Clouds. Junji reassured, "Do not worry, I have a plan. Once we arrive, I will elaborate further." Ho Junji nodded and then spurred his horse to the front to lead the troops. Li Chengqian felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue coursing through his body, particularly in his back and waist, which felt almost foreign to him. His injured leg had nearly lost all sensation. Yet, there was no choice, he had to endure. After all the trials he had faced, they were merely one step away from their goal. After riding for over 2 hours, Li Chengqian could no longer bear the strain. Just as he. Chapter 33 Waging a war of public opinion. Peering downwards, he mused, "Oh, I see you are awake. How goes the restructuring of the troops?" The forces of the Cloud City Governor's office primarily consist of former Turkic soldiers, and thus faced little resistance. Their reorganization is nearly complete. "You have done well." With that, he descended from the city wall. The capable generals at his disposal now were merely Ho Junji, Shui Rengui, and Beixiong Hui. Authority emerges from the barrel of a gun. Regardless of the grand schemes he might devise for the future, without a formidable military force, they would remain mere fantasies. "Junji, you have been honored with the title of Duke of Chen, and now I shall bestow upon you further accolades." Chapter 34 Allow me to summon that rebellious son. "Very well, bring him in, I wish to speak with him." After a brief interval of about 10 moments, a soldier entered the tent. His complexion pale and his lips cracked, clearly having gone several days without sufficient sustenance. Upon entering, he spoke urgently. "I am here under the command of the General of the Southern Campaign, seeking provisions. I humbly request." Before he could finish, he looked up and found Li Chengqian gazing at him with a smile. "What? How are you here?" The soldier, aware that Li Shimin had publicly declared the deposing of Prince Li Chengqian, found himself at a loss for words. Chapter 35 The Restoration of Crown Prince Li Chengqian's position. Yet, he found himself unable to stand idly by while 50,000 troops languished on the grasslands. Forcing himself to quell his tumultuous emotions, he suppressed the overwhelming frustration within and declared, "I was impulsive just now, I hereby retract my decree." Upon hearing his words, All the ministers knelt and bowed their heads in unison, exclaiming, "Your Majesty is truly wise." However, the indomitable iron-willed figure of the Zhongguan era had no intention of letting him off the hook. "Your Majesty," he began. "Should we not deliberate on how to dispatch former Crown Prince Li Chengqian to aid General Li Ji's forces? While it is true that Li Shimin is a magnanimous and illustrious sovereign throughout the ages, at this moment, he found it impossible to humble himself to issue such a command." Chapter 36 Selling paper. Is it a matter of marrying a wife? Or perhaps a night of consummation? Why is everyone so jubilant? The three of them exclaimed in unison, "Congratulations, Your Highness." "Oh, I am to marry." The three were utterly perplexed by this seemingly unrelated remark. Their expressions filled with confusion. The most straightforward among them, Be Xionghui, quickly interjected, "What wife? It is His Majesty who has decreed the restoration of your title as Crown Prince." This revelation left Li Chengqian greatly astonished. What on earth was Li Shimin up to? What could this possibly mean? At that moment, a soldier hurriedly approached. Chapter 37 The first step in the battle of public opinion. The four sentences of Henku. He took the paper and examined it carefully for a moment, his brow slightly furrowing as he spoke with utmost sincerity. "Your Highness, I must confess, this paper is of rather ordinary quality. Moreover, the court now operates official paper mills, producing sheets that are both affordable and of superior texture." Upon hearing this, Li Chengqian remained composed, unsurprised by the man's words. Paper of such quality was currently sold in private workshops for approximately 5 coins per sheet, while the court's official mills offered it for 3 coins. However, the court's pricing was, in truth, a loss they endured with gritted teeth. The reason lay in Emperor Li Shimin's determination to make reading accessible to the common people. Chapter 38 The grain robbery. Even the most recent battle report indicates that a certain Shuirengui, under the command of Li Chengqian, audaciously led 100 cavalry to directly assault the formidable Shuiyantuo army. Not only did he decapitate thousands of their soldiers, but he also succeeded in capturing the son of their commander, the Khan of Shuiyantuo, named Dodu. Thus, the conflict between the Tang Dynasty and Shuiyantuo should rightfully conclude with a resounding victory for the Tang. Henceforth, he must contemplate how to apprehend Li Chengqian and bring him back to Chang'an. After all, the eldest son of the Tang and the crown prince's presence in the vast desert is exceedingly perilous. Should he fall into the hands of the Western Turkic Khaganate or Goguryeo, or if either party were to proactively reach out to him, it could lead to dire consequences. Chapter 39 Resonance of Li Shimin. In truth, Li Shimin was somewhat oblivious, not due to a lack of information, but rather because, while the invention of paper was indeed a significant national policy, it was beyond his capacity to concern himself with every minute detail, such as whether it was sold for 1 coin or 2. Otherwise, with the vastness of the Tang Dynasty, if he were to oversee every matter, he would be utterly exhausted within a month. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Li Shimin did not display anger. His expression remained composed. This was a result of his recent self-convincing, as Li Chengqian had swiftly gathered an army, putting the court in a state of turmoil, and had also devised a means to extend the range of cavalry in battle. Chapter 40 This is truly written for me. Li Shimin curled his lips in a feigned ignorance, yet he continued to read intently. Upon finishing, he found himself utterly stunned. The 4 lines of verse encapsulated the essence of his aspirations, representing the pinnacle of his lifelong endeavors. Moreover, in pursuit of this lofty goal, he had sacrificed immensely: brotherly bonds, paternal ties, and now even his relationship with his own son. As these thoughts coursed through his mind, his eyes grew misty with unshed tears. He had completely lost interest in the court officials, simply gesturing for them to leave. Subsequently, he made his way to the rear hall, softly murmuring those 4 lines of poetry. Chapter 41 Retreat, Your Highness. These 2 possess formidable martial skills. If we do not bind them, they may pose a threat to your safety. What nonsense are you uttering? They are all my uncle's kin, or how could they possibly harm me? Release them at once. Observing his feigned innocence, both Li Ji and his companion displayed expressions of indignation. If mere gazes could slay, Li Chongqian would have succumbed 100 times over. After the soldiers untied the two, they stretched their arms and legs. Li Ji scoffed, "Your Highness, you are quite the strategist. It seems you are determined to oppose both the Tang Dynasty and your own father." Li Chongqian shrugged, a semblance of nonchalance gracing his demeanor. Chapter 42, The 5 Surnames and 7 Influences. The meaning of public officials is clear to me. However, as commanders, we must not be overly concerned with the gains and losses of a single city or territory. We should instead broaden our perspective. As long as we can ensure the vitality of our forces, provisions will inevitably follow. After speaking, he turned to Ho Junji, as the commander of our entire army. What are your thoughts? Please feel free to express them. This reckless gambler, unusually, refrained from uttering any boastful remarks, instead wearing a solemn expression. After all, the individual before him was his mentor, and a disciple could not help but feel a sense of trepidation in the presence of a master. Your Highness, the subordinate stated, I believe it would be prudent for us to heed your advice and temporarily avoid the spotlight. Chapter 43, Deprivation of supplies. Even if he were to dispatch troops to seize Shuayantuo's cattle and sheep, the vastness of the desert renders success uncertain before his provisions are entirely depleted. Contemplating this, Li Chongqian couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Having previously utilized his supplies to defeat Li Ji, he now found himself troubled by the very same issue. This truly is the law of retribution. He sighed, reflecting that had it not been for Li Jing's swift arrival, with the knowledge from his past life, he could have amassed an immense fortune within a year. Yet, alas, this world offers no what-ifs. For now, he must navigate through hardships and forge ahead with unwavering determination. Chapter 44, This dance is too expensive. I looked down upon it 4 days later. Li Shimin had received reports from both Li Jing and Li Chongqian. In the Taiji Hall, a gathering of ministers bore expressions of deep concern. The recent capriciousness of Li Shimin had left them in a state of constant anxiety. When would this torment come to an end? Regret gnawed at their insides. How could they have allowed Li Chongqian to depart? Had they foreseen this outcome? Even the fear of Li Shimin's suspicion would not have deterred them from deliberating on issuing the order for military deployment. At this moment, Li Shimin's eyes blazed with fury as he fixed his gaze intently upon the grand figure standing at the center of the hall. Chapter 45, The disheartening situation. At this moment, far away in the clouds, Li Chongqian was consumed by anxiety. It had been 4 days since the ransom note was dispatched. Yet the court had not responded in any manner. His army had even resorted to reducing their rations from 2 meals a day to merely 1. If this continued, in a couple of days, they would be fortunate to have a single meal. Meanwhile, sitting opposite him, Chen Wugang was even more distressed. He had already received deposits amounting to hundreds of thousands in currency. However, just days prior, Li Chongqian had abruptly retreated, halting the paper production, leaving him with nothing to deliver. Chapter 46, The Conspiracy. Seeing his silence, Li Minghua assumed that her elder brother was keeping secrets. Keeping secrets from your sister, huh? If you're not going to speak, then forget it. It's not really a secret, it's just never mind, I can't explain it to you. Alright. Alright. Suddenly, Li Minghua's expression turned serious. By the way, brother, when are we returning to Chang'an? I am rather craving the pastries from Chang'an. And I miss father a bit. Don't you want to see father? Returning to Chang'an. Meeting Li Shimin. Li Chongqian smiled wryly. He could not tell if his sister was genuinely naive or merely pretending. Chapter 47, Transferring internal conflicts. Pointing towards the outskirts, he bellowed, Hurry. Go and welcome that person into the city. The two individuals displayed expressions of delight and promptly galloped out of the city. After a brief interval, they returned. Yet their countenances remained grim. This caused Li Chongqian to feel a twinge of anxiety. Could it be that yet another envoy from the court had arrived? What more could there be? What is the matter? Has Li Shimin sent further instructions? Upon hearing this, the man shook his head and replied, Your Highness, I was sent by Master Chen. Oh, is he nearing? Rengue, Xianghui, swiftly lead the way to greet him. Chapter 48, The Swindler. Soon, a throng of onlookers gathered. And Li Qingqian narrowed his eyes slightly, relishing the effect he had created. In no time, thousands were drawn to the scene, the atmosphere buzzing with commotion. Observing this, he recognized it was time to speak. Brushing off the dew from his attire, he rose and surveyed the crowd, which gradually quieted down amidst the chaotic surroundings. Li Qingqian declared in a resonant voice, "Brothers, the reason I am lying here on the ground is to ensure that all of you can see me and understand that I share in the hardships alongside my brethren. Furthermore, rest assured, brothers, if we endure for just a few more days." Chapter 49, Life on the Edge. Very well, since that is the case. Let me borrow a phrase from your great Tang Dynasty, a gentleman's word is his bond, as difficult to retract as a team of 4 horses. Upon finishing his statement, the man clasped his hands in a gesture of respect and said, "I shall return immediately to report to my lord." "Good, good, go swiftly," came the response. With that, the man took his leave. After his departure, Li Qingqian could not help but chuckle. The current generation of negotiators indeed bore a striking resemblance to Jiang from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms television series of his former life. Yet, despite this amusement, he held little hope in his heart. After all, those who had managed to survive under the reign of Li Shimin were undoubtedly. Chapter 50, What on earth? Turning his head, he beheld a disheveled individual, his hair in disarray and his tattered clothing a testament to his plight, gazing back at him. "Who are you?" "Oh, it is I, the humble Chen Wugang. Has your highness forgotten me so swiftly? Goodness, how have you come to such a state? My apologies, I failed to recognize you. But truly, how did you end up like this?" With a face full of regret, Chen Wugang lamented his unfortunate decision to join Li Qingqian on this ill-fated venture. "Alas, I shan't speak of it. I had just purchased cattle and sheep from those merchants, and scarcely had I walked for half a day." Chapter 51, Black Powder. Accompanied by a hearty laugh, Li Ji exclaimed, "Ha, old Cheng, your blaster is of no use here." The 4 individuals possessed immense prestige within the military, and Li Qingqian, struck by a sudden inspiration, decided to present them with a set of mahjong tiles, hoping to ensnare their attention and divert their thoughts elsewhere. To his astonishment, this ploy proved remarkably effective. The 4 became utterly engrossed in the game, verging on madness. This reaction was not unexpected, for despite their current standing, these 4 had once been genuine bandits, indulging in every vice from revelry to gambling before aligning themselves with Li Shimin. He stepped into the tent. Chapter 52, The Wheels Flattened. Subsequently, Li Qingqian made his way towards the paper-making area. By this time, the location had transformed from an open pit into a space enclosed by tents. To safeguard the secrecy of the paper-making technique, the process involving the addition of wood ash was meticulously supervised by Du Zhangluan and Du He, with no third party permitted to intrude. Upon entering the paper mill, one was enveloped by a thick mist, and the aroma of boiling wood filled the air. Soldiers bustled about, some stirring the pulp while others transported the boiled bark, creating a scene of vibrant activity throughout the workshop. Further inside lay a spacious area. Chapter 53, The Fool. He unsheathed his personal dagger and, in a mindless frenzy, struck at Bourgeois, causing blood to splatter in all directions. Bourgeois let out a wretched scream akin to that of a slaughtered pig. Please stop. I surrender. I surrender." Upon witnessing this, Li Qingqian understood that the man had capitulated and gestured for Bei Xionghui to cease his assault. "Very well, take him to receive medical attention. We must not allow him to perish. As for these captives, ensure they do not starve, they may prove useful in due course." Report. Your Highness. The scouts have discovered that around 1,000 cavalry are approaching us. This announcement left the gathered individuals somewhat astonished. Chapter 54, The Messenger Pigeon. This remark caused Li Qingqian's eyes to brighten with intrigue. "Is it truly so?" he inquired. "Indeed it is," Du He replied, a hint of pride evident in his demeanor. "Very well," Li Qingqian said, turning his gaze toward the others. "You may leave for now. I have matters to discuss with Lord Du. Upon hearing this, the others departed, their expressions tinged with curiosity. Li Shimin felt compelled to act. Not out of distrust towards them, but rather due to the potential consequences should this information be leaked, endangering many lives. Has it truly come to fruition? He could scarcely contain the smile that threatened to break free. Are you not aware of my capabilities? Indeed, I am, Li Shimin affirmed. Chapter 55. I returned to Chang'an. Retrieving from the flames. Ho Junji's face was alight with excitement, his eyes shimmering with an unmistakable brilliance. Ha! The generals of Goguryeo, upon seeing our approach, intended to set fire to their supplies, only to be struck down by Rangue's arrow. He had witnessed Rangue's archery skills, which were indeed formidable beyond compare. Li Shimin immediately stepped beside him, casting an approving glance. Well done. By the way, did you leave any survivors? Rest assured, Your Highness, not a single one was spared. We ensured they were all eliminated, Bei Xianghue replied while brushing off the remnants of flesh from his attire. That's good to hear. Chapter 56. Stirring the Winds. An official sitting beside the city gate, perusing the correspondence of the merchants, suddenly furrowed his brow and whispered a few words to a nearby soldier. Who among you is sent by His Highness the Crown Prince to deliver gifts? The soldier called out loudly as he stepped forward. Disguised, Li Shimin stepped down from the carriage, his expression one of utmost reverence. Here I am. Very well. You may enter the city first, and someone will be there to receive you, he continued. All right then. With that, he gestured to several individuals behind him. To ensure the safety of his journey, he was accompanied by Bei Xianghue and Shuai Ren. Chapter 57. Why such disrespect towards His Majesty? This statement was met with disbelief not only from Li Shimin but from all present. While it was true that Li Shimin could produce inexpensive paper, the vast desert surrounding him was devoid of literate individuals. How could he possibly replicate and disseminate such a multitude of books? There was, of course, another possibility: Li Shimin might possess printing blocks for the books. However, the creation of such blocks is an arduous and time-consuming endeavor, and the conditions in the desert were wholly unsuitable for such a task. Moreover, the presence of entirely new annotations by Du Zhongluan on the books indicated that these printing blocks were certainly not transported from Chang'an. Thus, Tang Jian could only muster the courage to provide an explanation. Chapter 58. Is it inappropriate to visit a brothel in the morning? This thought seems reasonable, as the restoration of Li Shimin to the position of Crown Prince was merely a temporary measure. Furthermore, the current circumstances remain uncertain. The Crown Prince's departure to a hostile nation significantly differs from that of the legitimate heir. Li Shaogong refrained from pursuing the topic further and instead remarked, Your Majesty, are we engaging in political discussions with the esteemed officials? Let us proceed promptly, lest we delay matters of state. Li Shimin withdrew his pensive expression and turned to Feng Xianling and Wei Zheng, inquiring, How shall we approach the Crown Prince regarding the art of papermaking? What strategy do you propose? This question left the two men momentarily at a loss. How indeed should one proceed? Chapter 59. Not a bro, please be gentle with that. Yeye stepped aside at the entrance, slightly bowing to gesture, Please, everyone, come in. All right, prepare 10 guest rooms for us. My companions and I shall stay here for a few days. Certainly, I shall arrange that immediately. Subsequently, the group entered in an orderly fashion. Bei Xianghue clasped his hands towards the young lady and said, We sincerely thank you, miss. May I ask for your esteemed name? The young lady covered her mouth and let out a soft giggle. Sir, your words are so eloquent, they truly enchant me. You may simply call me Yeye, as my given name is just Wei. Very well. Chapter 60. The storage space. Fearing that a few individuals might inadvertently reveal their secrets, Li Shimin waved his hand and instructed, You may stroll over there. You, my second brother, come with me. Subsequently, the portly figure of Li Tai gracefully emerged from the Yanxi gate, a subtle smile gracing his features. He advanced with measured strides, engaging in hushed conversation with a tall, slender man adorned in Tibetan attire who walked beside him. The man was draped in an ornate Tibetan robe, wearing a felt hat that complemented his deep-set features, his eyes glinting with shrewdness and perceptiveness. During their discourse, Li Tai frequently nodded and smiled, exuding an air of familiarity, while the Tibetan gentleman maintained a composed demeanor. Chapter 61, sending him on his way the following morning, Li Chengchen rose early, yet the courtesan beside him remained in deep slumber, prompting him to furrow his brow. Could it be that he had been too rough the previous night, causing her some discomfort? As he descended from the bed to refresh his appearance, a murmuring voice echoed from behind him. "Oh, my head aches terribly, what has happened to me?" Upon hearing this, he turned back with a playful smile, saying, "You drank too much last night, it was I who assisted you in settling down." The woman opened her eyes, a look of confusion adorning her face. "Is that so? I cannot recall at all." Chapter 62, unreasonable. At that moment, another male voice resonated. "Ahaha, Your Majesty, are you in the mood for a hunt?" After a brief pause, he continued, "Brother Yaosha, I presume you are eager as well." From the tone of the voice, Li Chengchen immediately recognized it as that of Wei Qi Jingda, and it was evident from the context that Li Jing, Brother Yaosha, was also present. This revelation swiftly quelled his reckless inclinations. To be candid, Shui Rengui and Bei Xianghui indeed possessed the capability to engage these two men. Yet facing Li Shimin in a one-on-one confrontation, he glanced at his less than spry legs and decided against it. It seemed more prudent to defer to Jingda. Chapter 63, The Origin of Emptiness. Elder brother, where shall we begin our search? Li Chengchen possessed an intimate understanding of the layout of this place. After a moment of contemplation, he noted that the eastern side housed the quarters for ordinary monks, a serene abode for their ascetic practices. Although San Simeo was of humble origins, his esteemed reputation would undoubtedly preclude him from being assigned to such a location. At the rear, before the shrine of Empress Wendy, lay the residence for the abbot, albeit consisting of only a single chamber. The remainder was designated for managing temple affairs and hosting distinguished guests. It is likely that San Simeo had temporarily set up his bed in the room reserved for receiving esteemed visitors. I surmise that Sunday. Chapter 64, Desperation. Upon witnessing his demeanor, Li Chengchen spoke earnestly. "Third brother, should she be a woman of reputable standing, your elder brother would undoubtedly support your endeavors. However, the predicament lies in the fact that she is a courtesan, when truly, you deserve far better than this." At this juncture, Shui Rengui interjected, "Elder brother, do not be too harsh on him. In truth, that Yaya bears a striking resemblance to a girl from our village, which is why Xionghui is so taken." "Is that so?" Li Chengchen, preoccupied with various matters, had not inquired about their family circumstances or the origins of their apprenticeship. Intrigued, he prompted, "This is indeed an interesting revelation, do elaborate." "The story is rather lengthy," Shui Rengui replied, "let us discuss it further when we have the leisure." Chapter 65, Unusual Neural Pathways. What is the matter? Does General Qin doubt my authority? Should we not seek an audience with His Majesty tonight for his divine judgment? There is no need to trouble His Majesty over such trivial matters in the dead of night. We shall discuss it during tomorrow's court assembly. With that, Qin Chiong led his entourage away. Li Chengchen, having narrowly escaped calamity, squinted his eyes. The individual who had just conversed with Qin Chiong was named Do Lu Quan, a scion of the Shenbei nobility whose family had flourished significantly during the Northern Wei period. He was one of the principal supporters of Li Yuan at the onset of his rebellion, and he played a vital role in the campaign against Chaman. Chapter 66, The Arrival of Gifts. After pushing Bei Xionghui aside, her cheeks flushed with a hint of crimson, leaving one to ponder whether it was indignation or bashfulness that stirred within her. Is this the caliber of individuals under the crown prince of the Tang Dynasty? How distasteful. With that, she promptly turned and departed, accompanied by a throng of ladies. Your Highness, have I caused trouble?" Bei Xionghui expressed his remorse. Li Chengchen gently patted his shoulder in reassurance, saying, "It is of no consequence." He then addressed the assembly, "Everyone, please take your rest. We shall discuss matters further on the morrow." After enduring the tumult of the night, the attendees indeed felt somewhat weary in spirit, and they all bowed in agreement, replying, "Very well." Chapter 67, The Selection of the Heir. "Oh, then present it to me, for I am curious to see what he has brought forth." In stark contrast to the fervent enthusiasm displayed by the foreign envoys earlier, the court officials were suddenly enveloped in an unsettling silence. After all, the last time the crown prince presented a gift, it nearly incensed Li Shimin to his core. One could only wonder what this occasion would unveil. After a brief moment, an official from the Honglu temple entered the hall, accompanied by 4 men from the grasslands, and announced loudly the list of gifts. "The Crown Prince Li Qingqian has respectfully offered Mid-Autumn Festival tributes, including 3 large Yahoo from the Shuayantuo tribe, and 1 Meilu." Upon hearing this, a collective sigh of relief swept through the assembly, as the gifts were deemed relatively appropriate. Chapter 68, The Wu clan establishing a lineage is a matter of propriety and law, appointing the virtuous serves the realm and its people, whereas choosing based on personal affections is merely the folly of a tyrant. Yet, one wonders, Your Majesty, which prince do you intend to elevate? Upon uttering these words, the ministers broke into a cold sweat, for such a statement bordered on treason. Indeed, Li Shimin's expression darkened, his gaze turned ominous, and he let out a cold laugh. According to Master Kong's reasoning, whom should we designate? Kong Ingda, though resolute, was not a fool. That, Your Majesty, remains beyond my knowledge. It is entirely in Your Majesty's hands. Chapter 69, The father and son reunited. This predicament left him in a state of desperation. His body writhed with effort as he attempted to extricate himself from the throng, his voice rising in urgency. "Clear the way. I must leave, make way for me." Perhaps tired of his incessant cries, several burly men retorted with ire, "What are you shouting for? We are on our way to see His Majesty. Keep this up, and we shall strangle you, you little wretch." This situation infuriated Li Qingqian, for it felt as though his very life was at stake. Gritting his teeth, he disregarded any sense of humiliation and resolved to burrow his way through the crowd. Chapter 70, The 2 generals rushed to Chong'an. His shout drew curious glances from the surrounding crowd. On the platform, Li Shimin understood the situation at once. Realizing he had been swept along by the throng, and he couldn't help but burst into hearty laughter. Good lad, I never anticipated such boldness from you." "Curse you," the young man retorted. "I was born with courage, I need not heed the words of a disloyal and unfilial wretch." To speak such words in front of the public caused Li Shimin's expression to shift slightly. "Rebellious son. I had high hopes for you, wishing you would inherit the great legacy, yet you have shown utter defiance, repeatedly committing acts of treason. Today." Chapter 71, When the madman does not go mad. "You assume I have returned to normalcy." Below the stage, Li Qingqian was overjoyed, for although they had failed to capture Li Shimin in the chaotic pursuit, they had inadvertently seized Li Ji and Li Tai. A cold smirk crept across his lips. With these 2 as hostages, their chances of escaping were significantly heightened. However, the situation remained dire, as behind them stood Wei Qiji and Qin Qiong, armed and resolute, while in front loomed Li Shimin, leading a formidable array of Tang's fiercest warriors. Among the officials present, several scholars of history exhibited gleeful enthusiasm. This scenario was far more exhilarating than their previous encounter at the Taiji Hall, and it surpassed even the notorious betrayal of Emperor Bai Chuizhu and Sima Zhao in the streets. Chapter 72, Brotherhood and Filial Piety. Shui Rengui and Beixianghui naturally understood that His Highness the Crown Prince was unwilling to abandon them to face their fate alone. They were deeply moved, and their eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Your Highness." No need for further words. Li Qingqian tightened the reins and turned his horse's head. The 2 men followed suit without a moment's hesitation, charging towards the Grand Tang formation ahead. Leading the charge were Yuqi Jingda and Qin Qiong. Although Li Qingqian was engulfed in fury, his wits remained intact as he bellowed, Chapter 73, A Return to Battle. Meanwhile, all the generals cast their gaze upon Li Shimin. awaiting his command. The cacophony of explosions, coupled with the throngs of people celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival, had plunged the city into chaos after the recent expulsion of the citizens. The most powerful explosion, illuminated by the flames, appeared to have originated from the Honglu temple. Should the emissaries have perished, it would spell grave consequences. Although Li Shimin had nearly been consumed by fury moments ago, the gravity of the situation compelled him to forcefully compose himself. Li Daozong and Yuan Shaji. You are to each lead 500 troops immediately to quell the fires. Wei Qi Jingda and Qin Qiong, carry forth my orders. Chapter 74. Ebb and Flow. Mo and her companions had long remained in hiding. Gathering their forces would undoubtedly require time. Li Qingqian furrowed his brow slightly and inquired. Is 3 days sufficient? Mo pondered for a moment and replied, Your Highness, I shall do my utmost. Given the circumstances. The immediate priority was to find a temporary refuge. Shui Rengui and the others were not well acquainted with Chang'an and could not devise a suitable plan. After a brief pause, Li Qingqian slapped his forehead, a smile curling at the corners of his lips. Oh, I know just the place to go. Oh. Pray, do tell, Your Highness. Mo urged, intrigued by his sudden revelation. Chapter 75. Is he truly facing his end? Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she pondered for a moment before responding. In regard to Your Highness, many shops remained closed this morning, and the common folk have largely withdrawn into their homes. As for the troop movements, last night, Qin Qiong and Yuqi Jingda led the elite forces of the Jingshuoyan and the Jinwei northward along the official roads. A glimpse reveals the larger picture. Li Qingqian, in his 2 lifetimes, comprehended after a brief reflection that Li Shimin was likely gravely ill. Given the current circumstances, should he indeed depart this world, these 2 loyal subjects would be of no use in Chang'an and could potentially meet with untimely ends themselves. Chapter 76. The unpredictable situation. However, the other factions did not immediately take a stand, for they were not in the urgent position of the. Throughout history, in such moments, a single misstep could lead to the downfall of an entire family. Moreover, politics is akin to an old duck floating on water. The surface may appear tranquil, yet beneath lies a tumult of activity. Standing before the court officials, Changsan Wuji maintained a demeanor as calm as still water, with his hands naturally clasped before him, exuding an air of humility devoid of arrogance. Yet, his eyes shimmered with an unmistakable resolve. He had already resolved in his heart that regardless of what was said today, he would not. Chapter 77. The bell of 9 echoes at the 5th watch. The city of Chang'an remained enveloped in the embrace of night. Suddenly, the somber toll of 9 bells from the palace pierced the darkness, startling the roosting crows into chaotic flight. The eaves of the Taiji Palace began to reveal their outlines against the gradually brightening sky, while the copper bells at the corners swayed of their own accord, trembling as if in resonance with the somber tidings. The entire city of Chang'an, from the highest-ranking officials to the humble vendors and common folk, was roused by the resonant chimes. The 9 tolls signified the prince's departure from this world. In the ancestral hall, Li Qingqian was likewise startled by the sound. Springing upright from his bed in a sudden motion, he murmured to himself, has he truly departed? Chapter 78. The gathering storm. Upon returning to the palace, Li Qingqian noted that Changsan Wuji had dispatched the Jinwei to encircle the residence of Prince Wu, leaving no avenue for escape. There was nothing particularly unusual about this maneuver. Li Qingqian felt no surprise at Changsan Wuji's actions. After all, it was evident that he and the princes of Wei and Jin were absent from the capital, which undoubtedly dealt a significant blow to the powerful external relatives. However, his uncle, though capable, lacked decisiveness. Historically, he has been characterized as someone who straddles both sides without possessing a far-sighted vision, exhibiting a loyalty that is, at best, ambivalent. In essence, this individual is marked by a vacillating nature, perpetually torn between conflicting desires and often incapable of making firm decisions in times of crisis. Therefore, it is uncertain whether he possesses the capacity to quell the prevailing turmoil. Yet now. Chapter 79. The winds rise in Chang'an. With a resounding crash, The intricately carved door was thrust open, slamming against the wall. The delicate hairpin in Yeya's hair was askew, and several damp strands of hair clung to her pallid cheeks, while droplets of water trickled down her garments. Li Qingqian, already on edge, bolted upright from his bed. "What is it? Speak quickly." Closing the door behind her, Yeya's expression turned grave. "A report just came from below. Prince Wu, Liku, has suddenly vanished without a trace. The Imperial Guard is conducting a citywide search. It has begun. Liku must have finally decided to take action. Immediately." Chapter 80, The Frenzy of the Auxiliary Machine. The difference between being armored and unarmored is stark when it comes to combat prowess. Solitude, indeed, has its own arrangements. With that declaration, he spurred his horse towards the Eastern Palace. The others followed suit, executing their orders without hesitation. Meanwhile, outside the Taiji Palace, the cacophony of battle cries resonated through the air, and the expressions of the attending ministers varied greatly. They had not anticipated that King Wu, Liku, would dare to revolt, and with internal support, manage to breach the Xuanwu Gate so swiftly. At this moment, Chongsan Wuji's face was ashen, being astute and calculating. He had naturally devised multiple strategies against Liku. Yet, he was unprepared for the audacity of this man, who moved with a stealth that eluded detection. Chapter 81, The Strength of Two Bulls. Liku disregarded the reprimands from Chongsan Wuji, abruptly flicking the sleeves of his python-patterned robe as he turned and strode out of the palace doors. He commanded with a fierce voice, "All soldiers, heed my orders. We shall vanquish this treacherous foe." Outside the palace, the clamor of battle reverberated through the air. Bei Xionghui and his companions numbered only a little over 1,000. While Liku's forces amounted to a staggering 5,000 to 6,000, each clad in armor. They were immediately obstructed at the palace entrance, unable to advance an inch, and were gradually encircled, facing the threat of annihilation. The diverse origins of these troops began to reveal signs of trepidation across their faces. Bei Xionghui realized that if this continued, the morale of the army would surely crumble, and in a fit of anger. Chapter 82, The King's Rise. Blood stains Xuanwu. Turning to Li Shaogong, he offered a slight bow, his voice low and reverberating, "Thank you, Duke, for your guidance." Having spoken, he lowered his head and stood in silence, uttering no further words. Before the Xuanwu Gate, Xuerengui charged through the encirclement, finally reaching the side of the gravely injured Huizhong, who lay languishing in a pool of blood, his breath faint. Enraged, he felt a surge of fury, yet was hindered by the chaotic soldiers surrounding them, the glint of swords and blades preventing him from examining Huizhong closely. With gritted teeth, he hoisted Huizhong onto his steed. Glancing back at Liku amidst the tumultuous forces, his eyes blazed with a wrath that could ignite the heavens, and his heart brimmed with an overwhelming hatred. However, given the circumstances, he could not pursue any further. He fiercely pulled the reins and turned his horse around. Chapter 83, The Grand Stage of Xuanwu, Where Dreams Come Alive. Although Xuerengui harbored concerns for his junior brother, the present circumstances compelled him to set aside personal feelings. He respectfully addressed Ye, saying, "I entrust you with Xionghui." "Rest assured, General Xue, I shall do my utmost," she replied. Li Qingqian turned his gaze towards the brothers brought by Yunzhong, declaring, "I hereby appoint you as Zhechongdui, each commanding 100 troops to accompany me." Within his eastern palace, there remained a considerable stock of armor, which he had not fully donned earlier due to time constraints. Now, the moment was opportune to equip himself, preparing for the impending great battle. Furthermore, and most importantly, within his eastern palace, there were 5 beds. Chapter 84, Breaking Out. Li Jing slowly advanced, bowing before the coffin of Li Shimin, and spoke, "Regardless of how dire the situation may be, we cannot remain here like fish on a chopping board, awaiting our fate. If we choose to sit idly by, should His Majesty be aware, how shall we justify our actions?" His words elicited a contemplative expression among the surrounding ministers, as if they sensed an underlying message. Suddenly, the sound of urgent hoofbeats echoed from outside the palace. Li Jing exchanged a glance with Li Shaogong, each reading a resolute determination in the other's eyes. Very well, let us charge forth together, however. For those who wish to remain, I. Chapter 85 Uncles and Elders, obey the call. Upon witnessing the unfolding chaos, Li Shaogong and Li Jing, who led the charge, remained unperturbed. With sword raised, Li Shaogong bellowed, "Gentlemen, Xue Wanqi dares to defy our sovereign. Join me in vanquishing this traitor and restoring our nation." Li Jing, his silver beard billowing, intoned bravely, "Brave warriors, follow me to slay the enemy and serve our country." Most of the mid-level officers in the Imperial Guards were former soldiers of the Xuanjia army, and Li Daosong, along with Yuansha and others, had once held ranks in that esteemed force. Upon recognizing the situation, they echoed Li Jing's rallying cry with fervor. "Warriors! Where is the valor we once displayed on the battlefield? Hurry!" Chapter 86 The Rise of the Film Emperor. This revelation left everyone in a state of astonishment. The fact that Li Yuyuan had journeyed from Hebei to Chong'an was already surprising. How could he possibly bring along an army of over 10,000? In truth, Li Qingqian was merely aware of Li Yu's arrival but remained oblivious to the size of his contingent. His statement was merely an attempt to coerce the others into submission. The previously boastful Li Daozong fell silent, his gaze now warily fixed on the crossbows atop the city walls. Li Shaogong furrowed his brow slightly and turned to the gathered officials, inquiring, "What are your thoughts on this matter?" This question posed a significant dilemma for them, as many among them still held reservations. Chapter 87 The affection between uncle and nephew. This sudden turn of events left everyone present momentarily stunned. His previous demeanor had been utterly unrestrained. Had he not been outmatched, his imposing presence could have easily subdued Li Shimin. A fleeting glimmer of uncertainty crossed Chong Sanwiji's eyes, for he was still somewhat hesitant. The relationship between him and Li Qingqian had always been strained, and he feared that should he assist Li Qingqian in ascending to power, he might find himself discarded once his usefulness had waned. On one hand, he had yet to fully recover from the disorientation that had clouded his judgment. On the other, he found himself devoid of alternative options. Witnessing Li Qingqian's current demeanor stirred his heart profoundly. Chapter 88 The virtuous shall inhabit it. However, given the current circumstances, overthinking was not an option. He continued to inquire of Yeye, "What about Xionghui, how is he?" This question, of course, pertained to whether he could survive. Yeye offered a slight nod, then shook her head. This left him bewildered. What did it mean? What was his actual condition? Yeye let out a bitter laugh, stating, "Whether he survives or not entirely depends on his fate." Such words were truly tormenting for the family of the patient, causing a tightening sensation in Li Qingqian's heart. "I will visit him shortly," he declared, and then looked away. Chapter 89 Rewriting History and Reshaping Existence. Squinting slightly, he remarked, "The person has departed. Is it not acceptable to live in peace? Once his ambitions are fulfilled, all matters of state, great and small, shall be directed towards my uncle. Furthermore, dear uncle, you see, I possess few confidants within the court, hence, the governance of the state will inevitably rely on you in the future." Chong Sanwiji finds himself in a precarious position. Yet his hesitance to make a decisive move stems from the fact that Li Qingqian appears exceedingly difficult to manage in his eyes. Unlikely tie. Both he and Li Ji lack significant loyal factions within the court. Observing that Li Qingqian remained silent, he. Chapter 90 The cold arrow rubbing his nose. He continued to observe the unfolding battle. Xue Rengue truly lived up to his legendary status as an unparalleled general in history. Alone on horseback beneath the city gates, his steed reared up, and his iron spear danced like a dragon emerging from the sea, striking with the force of thunder. Each thrust bore the weight of immense power, leaving death in its wake. In a mere moment, a pile of enemy corpses had accumulated before his horse. The iron hooves were sleek with thick, crimson blood. And amidst the rain, the horse seemed to stand in a sea of gore. Gripping the iron spear with one hand, Xue Rengue swung his arm in a wide arc, unleashing another torrent of destruction. Chapter 91 The pigeon breaks the deadlock. He could never comprehend how Li Shimin, if indeed feigning death, would extricate himself from such a predicament. After all, once the news of an emperor's demise is proclaimed, it is not something that can be easily retracted. Was this old fellow intending to confine the information within Chang'an, thereby ensnaring all those with dissenting hearts in a single trap? Once the dust settled, would he then orchestrate a grand purge to eliminate all those privy to the truth? It must be acknowledged that although Li Shimin is well regarded in history for his receptiveness to counsel and his compassion for the common people, the benevolence of such an emperor, one who seizes the realm with immediacy, is merely relative to his governance. Chapter 92, Preserving the Green Mountains. At that moment, Li Shimin, adorned in dark armor and bearing a sturdy bow upon his back, galloped forth, his countenance shadowed with a somber expression. "Your Majesty," the two men exclaimed in unison upon hearing his voice. "Have you prepared everything?" "The entire army is assembled and poised for action, awaiting your Majesty's command." "Excellent. Once the army advances, you two shall lead your respective troops. One shall secure Lontian Pass, thereby obstructing the route from the capital to Bashu and Zhongnan. The other shall seize Jinyang, cutting off the path from the capital to Hashi, Longyu, and Shuofang." Chapter 93, Seal the Great Emperor with that. He cast the iron spear from his hand onto the ground. "Let us proceed. I wish to see my dear brother, the Crown Prince. It has been quite some time since I last laid eyes upon him." Upon hearing this provocative remark, Xuerengui's anger flared even more, his desire to slay the speaker intensifying. Yet, considering Li Chengqian's usual conduct, he realized that falling into the hands of such a person would be far worse than death itself. Thus, his fury subsided by half. "Ah, well. You do possess some sense of the situation," he remarked. "Seize him. Retreat." After a brief pause, he pointed at the dispirited soldiers and continued, "By the way, in 5 moments." Chapter 94, Chongsan Wuji's impassioned plea. Upon entering the Eastern Palace, at the entrance of the Shenda Hall, Chongsan Wuji's fervent voice resonated within. "The late emperor has scarcely departed to the realm of the divine, and do you, my esteemed colleagues, intend to witness the royal princes engage in mutual slaughter, thereby repeating the catastrophic events of the 8 Kings Rebellion? In the past, the Jin Dynasty crumbled amidst chaos, the 5 barbarians ravaged the land, and the central plains were left desolate, with 9 out of 10 households in ruin. Esteemed gentlemen, I implore you to assist in this endeavor. Behold this nation. Reflect upon the arduous 20 years endured by the late emperor, who braved arrows and stones, his armor stained with blood, leading our valiant soldiers to secure this realm." At this juncture, his voice suddenly faltered with emotion. What valor and grandeur the late emperor possessed! Just the thought of his sacrifices. Chapter 95, The Confucian Assembly. Returning to Master Kong, I have nearly resolved matters beyond my concern. Now, I wish to discuss the late emperor. Kong Ingda nodded slightly, fixing his gaze upon me, yet remained silent. He understood that my presence at this moment was not without purpose. Although he could not discern what role a mere scholar might play in these circumstances. To be candid, I have come seeking Master Kong's assistance with a pressing matter. Oh. As long as it serves the welfare of the common people and the stability of the realm, Your Highness need not hesitate to speak. This old minister shall certainly do his utmost to assist. Chapter 96, The more gunpowder, the better. After Kong Ingda led his men into the palace, Li Chengqian initially intended to remain outside for a while longer. However, a soldier rushed in with an anxious expression. "Your Highness, the Crown Prince. General Shui has sent word that Liu has been repelled by his forces." "Oh. This is indeed good news. Rest assured. I shall reward the merits and bestow honors upon the troops." The soldier continued, "However, General Shui has captured several prisoners and reported that Liu has already seized the Daming Palace. Moreover, the Prince of Hejian and the Duke of Wei have communicated that after occupying the Eastern Market, Commander Yu has taken his men to assault the Daming Palace." Chapter 97, Ascending the Throne, Winds Rise in Chang'an. "I did not mean that, truly." A soft chuckle escaped. "Enough, if I move too much, the newly healed wound may reopen." "Very well, I shall heed your words." A fleeting look of melancholy flickered in Ye's eyes as she gently brushed her fingers across his face. Xianghue, I am aware of your sentiments, yet do you understand? I have concealed myself within the brothels for many years and I am not pure. Upon hearing these words, Baixiangwe's expression remained unchanged, though a slight smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. How could I ever despise you? Besides, His Highness has spoken to me. Chapter 98, He has arrived. On the following day, at the break of dawn, Li Shimin stood atop the city walls. Flanked by a multitude of his relatives led by Chongsan Wuji and Gao Shalian, as well as his staunch confidants, Shui Rengue and Ye. Alongside the former minister of Li Yuan, Do Lu Quan. Your Majesty, is this truly feasible? Ye inquired, her tone laced with uncertainty. The others around them echoed her sentiments, their expressions revealing doubt. Chongsan Wuji stepped forward, his countenance marked by palpable displeasure, and spoke with grave authority, Your Majesty. I still believe we must immediately dispatch troops to eliminate the remaining traitors within the city. Chapter 99, Annihilate this old Deng beside him. Shui Rengue sensed his transformation and clasped his hands in reverence, saying, Your Majesty, rest assured, I shall fight valiantly on the battlefield and vanquish the enemy forces. Excellent. Excellent. I undoubtedly trust you, Rengue, replied the emperor. After the passage of an incense stick's duration, the army gradually arrived at the moat. The sound of iron clashing reverberating like rolling thunder. Subsequently, the military formation parted like waves, and a tall figure emerged, riding forth on horseback. Clad in dark armor. He bore a massive, sturdy bow upon his back, and at his waist, the quiver held dozens of white-feathered arrows, meticulously arranged, their shafts as thick as a child's arm. The pristine carved fletchings fluttering gently in the breeze. Chapter 100, Life and Death on the Line, Fate should not end as the words left his lips. The gunpowder on the crossbow bolt erupted in a violent explosion, accompanied by an intense wave of heat. Under the sun's glare, countless shards of metal reflected a chilling light, shooting out in all directions. Li Shimin's eyes widened in shock, instantly recalling the explosion that had occurred on that fateful night in Chang'an. How could he have forgotten that Li Shimin possessed such a peculiar explosive device? Having fought countless battles throughout his life, his experience was invaluable. At the precipice of life and death, he tightened the reins, redirecting his steed. Simultaneously, he withdrew his foot from the stirrup, positioning his entire body behind the horse. A series of muffled thuds resonated as the warhorse surged forward.